All right, we're ready? All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to officially call the meeting to order. And then we'll start with the pledge. No pledges today, so I guess I will go ahead and lead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is this the part where you give yourself a pin now?
Yes, oh, do I get my own pin?
Not bring them in.
Oh, come on.
I'm sorry.
Offended.
Yours
Okay.
is on special order.
Special order, yes. It's like bigger, so I can
It is.
really lapel it on. All right, approval of agenda. I think that there was going to be one change. Yes?
Just that Dannon is unable to be here to give us a select board update, but he did email me and let me know that they haven't met since we spoke last, so there weren't any major updates other than the town collaborative meeting, which I'll speak to in my report.
All right, perfect. Can I get a motion for that?
Make a motion with the select board update removed.
Second?
Second.
I know this is, any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then approval of minutes is next on the agenda from the June 4th, July 16th public workshop. I did not see anything.
I noticed one small typo in section 2.
Yeah.
It says BOAR. Other than that, I'm okay with it.
Page 2,
Page
section 2.
Section 2, on the first,
Draft.
Oh,
first
yep,
one. Just missed the word.
board. We need a D there, gotcha. Perfect, thank you.
Anybody see any other changes or amendments? No?
Do them all together.
Okay. Anyway, I think we can do them all together, even though one's a workshop, right? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Rick's first, I'll
Rick's first.
second.
Okay, any discussion? I'll just add thank you to Bridget for taking those very detailed workshop notes and considering it was her first workshop, so thank you for that.
Nice work.
All those in favor?
Yo.
Aye. All right, this is our first opportunity for public comment. I'm only smiling because there is no one in the audience here in person, so I'm assuming that nobody here would like to publicly comment, but we do have one person online, so if that person did want to comment, they are welcome to. And as always, I will give the disclaimer, this is just merely your first time that you can comment. We have a second opportunity for public comment, should anyone join us later, at the end of the meeting. So I'll give it a second. All right, moving on to superintendent report.
All right, I feel like as soon as I write these, there's updates, right? So I'm going to share what's here and then add anything that is additional or changes or informational in the meantime. So I've done a couple of second finalist interviews this week, so if all goes well, ACLC will be fully staffed. BES will be down to 2 paraprofessionals, reading specialist, exciting, secured. Yep, we've struggled to get that position with somebody who holds the certification, who is was bred to be a reading specialist through the training, and we have found somebody. So we are super excited about that. We're super excited about all our hires, but that's a critical shortage area, and it has been a challenge here since Diane Messer retired, who also wasn't a trained reading specialist. She was a special educator, initially. So it will be exciting to have a reading specialist on board that was trained to be such. So ECLC should be all set, BES down to 2 paraprofessionals, and BMS, I think we will also be all set. And with 7th grade math, we've gotten creative. So,
That's great.
yeah, a certified math person did not fall out of the sky, just to be honest, but we are continuing to.
Oh, okay, I thought I was like, oh my gosh,
No.
we got a person. Oh.
And
I love being creative, that's good.
it's been a struggle for us for years, and our scores show it, right? When you look at middle school math, it's been a critical shortage area in the state for, I don't know, anybody have an idea? It's every year I've looked,
Yeah.
10, 15 years. I mean, it's been tough. So I'll keep you posted.
All right. So that's looking good.
So we're looking good from a hiring standpoint, which is exciting because I know my fellow superintendents across the state are not in the same boat. Everybody's struggling in the same areas, no surprise there. So jumping into building highlights, I don't even know how Joe and Brian and that crew are going to get everything done, but I feel like we say that every summer. The exciting thing this summer is, in addition to the typical cleaning, we're giving some spaces, some fairly significant facelifts, and others like this room, some more minor facelifts. It's amazing how quickly the time goes by. Like, this building has been utilized as an SAU for 9 years now with no like paint or, little upgrades. So it's time to patch some of the the scuffs and paint. And I know you're all sad to hear this, but the chairs you're sitting in are going away. Yeah, so really all that's happening, because we don't want to spend a lot of time and/or money, are just, like I said, the scrapes and scuffs and things like that. And then we did buy all new chairs because they're old and tired, and frankly, when you look in the audience, like it's mishmashed and stuff coming out of the cushions. So,
Just make sure they can go up and down for the short people.
yeah, these will go up and down, the audience ones will not.
There you go.
BMS, the sign, because we're trying to go big and prominent with the middle school, Joe is going through proper channels because what he's proposing is slightly outside of the size, so he's going to go through the town and just make sure we're square before any actual construction happens on that. So we can certainly make adjustments if we need to.
But to be clear, like, we're doing that at we're not being nice, but it's an advisory.
Yes.
We can do whatever the hell
Yep.
we want. But
Yes,
we
yeah.
want to make sure we're in keeping with what the,
But the thing is if you're following the rules, I'm a huge proponent of follow the rules, because it's pretty hard to stand there and go, well, because we're the town, we don't have to do this, but
Yeah.
you want to put a sign in front of your store and just say, I'd like to do this. And so, yeah, I see both sides.
Oh, no,
but
it's just,
I've kind of always been one to try to even be a proponent on the town side to say, do it so that you don't have to.
yeah, by way of history, we fought not fought, but we
Right.
we kept the sign at the end of our driveway here at the elementary school in keeping, even though we didn't have to.
Right.
But at the middle school, sometimes, we're messaging to the whole community
Yeah.
for a community purpose, not to advertise that we've got a sale on steak tips,
Right.
right?
And,
So take tips.
yeah.
We should.
Listen, we're looking for out-of-box ways to,
We need to pay for a math teacher, and that's the way to do it.
Certainly the most significant change will be the foyer to the elementary school. I know a lot of people are like, we don't want to see it till it's done. It's pretty exciting.
I can't wait to see
So,
that.
I know, I've seen bits and pieces, but I'm kind of staying away as well. Well, and really the jackhammering kept me away. So the old Wendy's tile, thank you for that.
oh my gosh, yes.
Right?
it is
Wendy's
like
restaurant,
Wendy's.
yeah. So the tile is gone, and the ceiling's been raised, and it's going to be pretty cool.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I couldn't bust it completely open because there's a lot of business going up in that ceiling, but able to get a little bit of a pitch to it, so it's going to hopefully get rid of that cramped 1970s flat feel and just feel a little more airy, open. LED lighting going in, so you can change it with events if high schools are visiting in their colors. There'll be a big screen TV there to announce events happening. Like, it's going to be pretty slick. I'm pretty excited about it.
It's great. I can't wait to see
Now
it.
it's a disaster.
It is a disaster.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a disaster.
It always looks worse before it looks better.
Yeah. And we were able to reclaim some space in the kitchen that they weren't using consistently for office space, and shift their computer usage and desk kind of around the corner in order to open up the wall. So if you're facing the cafeteria entrance, that sort of flat wall on the way, will be a door there, where that bulletin board was.
Oh, okay. I was
So the
like,
bulletin board's gone, there'll be a door there, it'll be then sealed on the kitchen side, so now we've created a new office space there.
It was like a little makeshift office for them, right?
Yeah, it was.
So you went
That
into
almost
the
didn't
kitchen
seem-
to the right
Yeah.
and then again to
It was
the
like a
right.
hidden
Exactly.
room that didn't look like it should be there.
And pretty good size.
Yeah.
And they were,
With a
yeah,
bathroom.
yeah, and they were in there rarely.
Okay.
So when we were looking at solutions to the REACH program and knowing that we didn't have a full classroom space, but also need a reading specialist space and other things, we're like, okay, how do we get creative? So that was where we were able to gain space there without, yet again, taking away from something else, because we had looked at the back of the library and some other options, and we just didn't want to take away student staff, space in
And the
it.
library is not a very,
The
very
library's not
spacious
very
either,
spacious
so,
either,
okay.
yeah.
That's great.
So we were able, that's all, that building is a mess right now, but it will come together. So that is exciting. I think I've covered all the building highlights at this point. There's some
With all that
minor-
they've got going on, is there anything that's going to be dragging out into the school year? Like, is everything going to be done before the kids come back, or is it?
The only thing that may not be 100% complete is the BMS sign. But other than that, yeah, the new flooring and foyer and all that will be done. ECLC needed some sidewalk repair and some crack repair. That's all set. So that building they'll be good to go, I think. Like, teachers can start moving in a week or so. That building will be done. One of the custodial staff has just been there full-time, just cranking away at that building.
And is the thought process to replicate on a ECLC school scale, a sign at
Yep.
ECLC? Okay, good.
Absolutely. Yeah, because right now it's in a great spot on the hill, but it needs to be up a
Elevated,
little bit,
yeah.
and then we don't have any signage there.
Letterboard, right.
Exactly. Yeah. So I wanted it done this summer, but Joe was like, Deanna.
It's in the pipeline, that's great.
It's totally in the pipeline. We've already talked about it. Materials ready to roll. It's just a matter of the manpower to get it done and knowing that we have to open the buildings, so.
No, it's going to be an important point of signage. When you think about the rec department renovation and all the traffic that could
Absolutely.
potentially be added to that road with all the enhanced programming and stuff, it's probably going to be.
Well, and we know that, and no criticism at all here, when your kids are little, like as your kids become more independent, you let them be independent, and parents are less engaged, active in the school community. You want your signage and your messaging everywhere, and especially your littles on up. So excited to get that done
great.
as well. So lots going on facility-wise around the district. The financial audit is happening right now, so we will have the absolute final numbers of where we land at the end when that is all done. In order, of course, we'll fund the warrants, and then the 2.5% we're allowed to carry. I put contingency fund in here. It's not called that anymore, but I know that for you all, that makes sense. Everybody sort of refers to it like that still. And then we'll know what is ultimately going back to taxpayers for the upcoming tax cycle. We are starting to gain some ground back with Medicaid billing. We don't have that number yet, but of course the rules have changed again. So we'll see what happens with that. But we did just find we should get about $64,000 back in special education aid. That used to be called catastrophic aid, if anybody has that old language in their brains. So essentially what that is, just for people's background knowledge, there's a very convoluted formula that changes every year, but essentially when you have a student that you either have to provide a tremendous amount of resources for in district, most often it's the students that you need support for out of district, and you place, is it 84 or 85,000 now?
The cap?
The cap?
It's 69.
69, I was off, great. So, right, they change the cap every year. So once you hit that threshold of $69,000, then you can bill what is called special education aid. You don't get everything that's remaining. There's a formula, then you get a percentage back of what the district spends above and beyond the 69,000. So we only have a couple of students that qualify for that. You don't want anybody to qualify for that, to be honest, but when you do have extenuating needs and circumstances, at least there's some support from the state for that additional resource that's needed. So
And we doubled it from last year. Last year, we got 30,000. Now, this year, we're getting 64,000 back. So, for what it's worth, it's good.
No, it's worth
Right.
$30-some thousand.
Yeah, it's a lot of
Exactly.
money.
Yeah. Like, we have to expend it no matter what. So it's a very meticulous paperwork reporting process. And so it's, one of those things that if you don't enter the bill and the service absolutely the way the system will accept it, it kicks it out and you don't get the funding. So it's tied right to the student's individual plan in the system that connects to the state. So,
The state paperwork being complicated, that's so,
Yeah.
so unlike them.
yeah. So that's, it's always like they change the rules, right? And then it takes administrative assistants some time to understand what they're looking for and some trainings, and then you sort of catch up, and you're like, oh, okay, we're getting the most out of this now. So I think at this point, we now know what they're looking for, and we're getting the most out of, that we can, that we're extending. So that's the good news there. Committee updates, so our illustrious policy committee met for a couple hours on July 10th. We have another meeting coming up in August. We, again, went through quite a few policies, and I'm not going to go into the ones we went through because they are on the agenda today for first read. The intent at this point is to jump into the B policies next, which are school board policies, but I anticipate we will need to take a break from that, or maybe not even get started yet, because we always get the fall updates and bills that are signed over the summer by the governor. We do know, and Katie just went to a training, that the Title IX regulations have changed pretty drastically. So we'll wait.
A lot of policies we have to update.
Yeah, I just came back from vacation, so we haven't had a chance to debrief that yet. From a policy perspective, it's not as cumbersome as when I did it, how many years ago? Quite a, 3 or 4 years ago now. And the nice thing is you go to the training and now they give you the policies, and so we're not then having to incur that additional legal expense like I needed to last time because the overhaul was so huge. So that is supposed to be in place for September 1. Yep. So we are hoping to have those policies ready to come forward for the August meeting. My suggestion would be, given that legal wrote them, that we would adopt them at that point so that we are in compliance timeline-wise. We can then kick them back to policy to review to make sure there isn't anything that we need to adjust, and then bring them back to the board if we need to.
Makes sense.
Just so that we can have them in place. Yeah. I mean, the last time it got reauthorized, we didn't meet the deadline, and neither did probably 80% of the state. So it's not a horrible thing. From a training perspective, we are more trained than we need to be. What hats you can wear and what trainings are required has changed. Really, it kind of all falls on Katie and I now, instead of, there was the last round, the requirement was for every building administrator to be trained, and so they're kind of off the hook from that perspective, but it puts a little more onus on Katie and I. So we just have to there's always a little bit of an adjustment when you're in a smaller district to figure out like how many hats can you wear, and making sure the proper appeal process is there and all the things.
Do you anticipate any issues with the bill that the governor signed in reference to sports and the gender of your birth? Do you anticipate issues with that with the district?
Right, currently with our population that I'm aware of, I do not, but that's not to say it doesn't arise. It's been a really I'm trying to think of the right adjective. Just sensitive topic, I think that's the right adjective. Very sensitive topic for a lot of people. It's causing your high schools a lot of upset.
Will that,
right
I mean,
now.
are we gonna have to look at, policy changes because of it?
Potentially. So, the legal team that I was just with last week made the statement that while the bill has been signed, they're not really sure of the impact yet legally, so
It's going to go to the courts.
it's gonna go to courts, and then they will determine what's next steps and what schools need to implement for
Everywhere else
policies,
is.
so we'll keep updated with that. Drummond Woodsum's really good at making sure we're updated,
And
so,
schools have not been directed
one way
to
or the
make
other.
any change at this
Correct.
time. They've been directed to
They
hold
status
off
quo.
and wait until,
And I think everywhere else that it's
Supreme Court.
passed in a state, and then it's gone to the courts have negated it. So,
Yeah. And, I mean, I know there's probably potentially still one person listening, but just for clarification, and for people who may listen after the fact, it is the bill around transgender rights and the, your gender at birth versus your identifying gender and which sports team you're permitted to play on. So, just so people have that
there was also
knowledge.
like bathrooms as well, I think, wasn't that, in the locker rooms?
Yeah, the major focus was sports teams, trying, the sentiment behind it was trying to physically protect young women, you know, from a potential larger individual born as a male. We know structurally, physically, we're very different, and that looks different at the high school level than it does at the middle school level. So I anticipate it's going to get a lot of attention across the state for the next few months, especially for the districts who have students who have been playing on the teams of the gender in which they identify. So I have already heard from many colleagues that it's causing them, you know, some sensitive conversations, for sure. So I don't anticipate it's going to be a right out of the gate issue for us, because we haven't had to make those decisions up until now at the middle school sports level, but we do know that bathroom use has been a concern for us. So we will keep tabs on it. Absolutely. Wellness Committee, obviously on hiatus for the summer, where we,
Vacation.
yeah, where we left off with them, just to kind of refresh everybody's memory. There's a lot of concern over energy drink usage at the middle school level, and, yep,
Too much caffeine.
way, way too much caffeine. Yep, that was timely. I may have had a lot of coffee before this meeting. So, and, you know, it's a tough call, right? It's just like when they change wellness policy and you know, you're not incentivizing, you know, test taking or not having sweet treats for birthdays and really trying to, you know, we're an obese nation for the most part. And so those regulations coming down, looking at all of those pieces. However, parents are parents, and, you know, there's a lot of thought out there that we as a school system can't dictate what a parent puts in their child's lunchbox. And if they're being dropped off, and they've gone through Roman Joe's, and their parent has bought said drink for them, you know, that's a tough one. So it's a lot of like, okay, but you're not their parent kind of conversations in the committee, but there is a concern about that, as well as the typical, you know, I'm going to get my school lunch because I need to go through the line and get my school lunch, but I'm going to go ahead and buy the extras that I can, and my whole lunch is going to go in the trash. So it's an age-old problem
What
and
was that one again?
conversation.
So-
So kids will go through the line because they go through the line because they are supposed to get their hot lunch,
Right.
right? But at the middle school, they have choice. And so they'll get their lunch, but then they'll also buy an ice cream if it's ice cream day, or an extra bag of chips, or whatever it may be, and then they eat all the goods,
The ice cream and the shit, and they throw out their
and
healthy
they
lunch.
throw out the entire lunch.
I would like to add about the energy drink conversation, because I can sense emails coming in with questions about that. Besides the obvious fact of that, we obviously cannot control what you choose to, and you have every right to choose to buy your child whatever you would like outside of the school hours. But the issue is that unfortunately, the side effects of caffeinated drinks at that level on a young body ends up spilling into, excuse the pun, the classroom, right? So
Yes.
behaviors that might not potentially exist when you then flood a young body with like 350 milligrams of caffeine
Right.
in a 15-minute period, and then we wonder why students are having maybe some behavioral issues. We're hearing from staff that there is a definite correlation at the middle school. It is not just an assumptive one anymore, and they really would love to have something a little stronger from the policy level to help to reduce that for the benefits of education, for the benefits of the students. So it's not just that we are trying to control anything, it's how do we find that balance between having an appropriate behaviors for a classroom, but also respecting your rights as a parent. So
Absolutely.
we're working on that, we're talking about it, but
It's not just the caffeine, those drinks are also loaded with sugar and all kinds of other.
and they spill a lot too. I heard that they're
Greatness.
spilling everywhere, that's another thing.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. As someone that, to the best of my knowledge, never sent their kids in with energy drinks, but that's not to
Right.
say we didn't. I might have, who knows? In fact, there's a couple times I think I bought some tea or something that turned out to be something that I probably shouldn't have bought for the kids. But that said, once you start going down, that's a slippery slope, because don't think this district wants to be in the position of policing what's in a kid's lunchbox,
Nope.
okay? Boy, that Twinkie has a lot of sugar in it, and it's gonna make the kid act up. What business is that of yours? Like,
Yeah.
that's my kid's lunch, you better
Agreed.
keep your hands off. So, there's one side of it is the behavior issue and the disciplinary, ramifications, which that's within our purview, right?
Yep.
But what a parent decides to put into its kid's body
Absolutely.
is up to them, right? So.
Yeah, it's hard.
And maybe the ramification is, well, geez, Johnny acted up, Johnny got in trouble, and we tell them, well, that's because maybe Johnny had, a Aroma Joe's triple latte before he came to school. Maybe mom and dad won't choose that and go for hot chocolate next time, I don't know.
Yeah, there was discussion about education, family education as maybe a
Yeah.
first step, ongoing step as well to really focus in on that, which I appreciated that they were taking.
Sure.
The staff were taking that route of, let's start with just educating families
Because you
on
could
that.
go into, pre-diabetes and all sorts of
Yeah.
stuff. We could be going into their
Oh, yeah.
lunchbox and saying, well, that's not good for this kid. That's not good for this kid,
Yeah, the other piece that comes up pretty frequently is, kids come in with multiple, and then they're
Distributing.
selling them sometimes, and then obviously we can squash that.
Right.
And they're
Such
also just
entrepreneurs,
distributing
huh?
them to their friends whose parents aren't allowing that type of thing. So, again, it's,
God, kids are so great.
like, you don't want to
Great,
police
I love
that. And that's been my message at the policy and committee level to the very passionate teachers who are saying, hey, this is a problem. I'm like, ugh, there's two sides to this, and
Yeah.
it's a tough one,
I think the
Make the parents sit there with their kid that just bought them that double latte. and see
They can
what
come in for that Saturday detention, right, with them? Just kidding, just kidding.
Yeah. Well, I've been on Sweet and Tart Rush, and you hang out with them for 20 minutes now.
All right.
I should have just left it at, they're on hiatus for the summer.
I know, that's
Silly girl. No worries, it's still in committee. It's still in committee. We'll keep
This is
going.
an example of too much.
True.
All right, high school contracts.
So we have reached out to the superintendents and the BEAs, business administrators, to get that process going. Let's see, we just heard back today from Dover. I haven't heard from Oyster River yet. New superintendent there, I'll just reach out and go meet with him directly about it, because we did a lot of that legwork already last year.
Well, we had that one preliminary, right? And so like, it would probably be good to follow that up and get going, because because then Jim left, and then it'd be
Yeah.
good to start up a new conversation.
And we had Attorney Eckert already drafted with Oyster River's input. So we're in pretty good shape there. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of getting the current team on board, and I know there was some school board member shifts, which is why we did it prior to everybody sort of leaving who had that history. So we need to get going on
So
that.
Oyster River is myself and you?
Yeah.
That's us? And then who's doing Dover? Is it
No, it's Garth and Maura.
Moira and Oyster River? Yeah.
You and I for Dover.
Oh,
You
that's
guys are
right,
doing Dover.
that's right, it's over.
Yeah.
Yes, I was on Oyster River last time, sorry. Sorry, yes.
Okay.
And again, for community knowledge, and I know Moira said this at the high school forum night, those need to go forward as warrants, and we just really need people to understand that they kind of need to pass as warrants, because, I mean, obviously, we can't tell people how to vote, but we need to have the ability legally to send all of our student population off to high school. And without not having a high school, we need some agreed upon high school contracts.
You know, it's important for them to know what the ramifications are with that, yes.
But you're eliminating Co-Brown, is what I heard.
Oh my
So
gosh,
Stop.
We are
Do
not.
want that on record.
That was just a
Absolutely
rumor on
not.
Barrington Connection.
That was an absolute rumor, and
So, just out of curiosity, assuming it fails, I mean, I get it, if you say, well, yeah, you pass one school and not the other, okay, then you said, then well, a lot of your kids have to, but what if both of them, what if all warrant articles fail? You just not send your kids to high school?
well, you have to send your kids to high school. So, well, if both, so if Oyster River fails and Dover doesn't,
Well,
right?
yeah,
Then
not-
Dover has we already have a contract in place with Dover that says they can take all of our students.
Yeah, yeah.
If Dover were to fail and Oyster River were to pass, we would have to go do some serious discussion and negotiation with Oyster River. They have already indicated, given their projected declining enrollment, that over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, we've already have a schedule in place to incrementally increase our availability for students there, but it is by no means our entire population. And so I know that Co-Brown is more than happy to have more of our students, so that would be the situation that we would be in. If they both failed, we would be in a tough spot to find.
But no means no.
However, you gotta send your kids to high school
Well,
somewhere.
that was kind of why I was asking the question, you're kind of, the law says we gotta send our kids to high school, but
Right.
from a voting perspective, no means no.
Right.
So if the voters, you know, I don't.
Which
Well,
means
in a nightmare scenario, I think, what district was it that they literally were VLAXing their high school students because they couldn't,
Yep, they didn't have anywhere to send them all.
yeah, so they had to, I mean, they were doing it in trailers in their parking lots, and that would be the,
That would be the nightmare.
Yeah, the doomsday. It's just on us to make sure that we communicate clearly that what that warrant article means as they're reading it. 'Cause I know, every time I see it, it's like, it's a very long one, and it's complicated if you are not, so it's easy for one, I could see that someone's like, yeah, whatever, so just.
no, I mean, each one of the high schools has amazing pros and a few cons, right? But I think it's, when you're thinking about it, it's not a choosing between Oyster River or nothing, Dover or nothing, Co-Brown or nothing. It's,
Yes.
Barrington should be voting for, even though it's 3 different warrant articles, school choice.
Yes.
Or, guess what? We're gonna have to look at building a high school, so we better get behind
Yes.
every year.
Well, and I
which-
think-
And the voters have never had a problem, I mean, it's always been, I mean, that's, the model works.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Garth. It's really about the messaging around, do we value and want to maintain high school choice, which over the course of last year, the surveys, the forum, all pointed, yes, we want to maintain that. So.
Or do you want to see a warrant article for a high school? I mean,
Right, so it's not a matter of voting on one or the other being better or another or what have you. It's really, do we want to continue to allow our families and our students to have an option? Whether it's because of the type of programming they have, their culture, location, a lot of it's just simply location because of where you live in town. So there will only be 2 warrant articles, not 3 though, because Co-Brown is a memorandum of
Understanding.
agreement or understanding, not a long-term tuition contract. So I think if something odd were to happen where one of them didn't, if both didn't pass, that would be hard. If one or the other didn't, we would then be looking to Co-Brown going, help, to which they would graciously go, yes, please, because their enrollment historically has been declining as well, although they just obtained a contract with a nearby district, so they're
Who did
in
this?
better shape. Co-Brown. Yep.
okay.
Teacher contract negotiations, our first meeting is coming up. More so just an organizational meeting at this point, maybe some high-level points of interest to be shared at that time, but really just to get us organized and started, get some meetings on the books, and then probably from this point forward, you won't hear much about that again, because it's negotiations and it's confidential up until the point that we reach agreement. So we'll share what we can if and when appropriate. Portrait of a Learner has been an exciting process. Jump in if you would like. It was something that we didn't talk a lot about last year, but we did a lot of work around it, and now it's taking off some steam, for sure. And given that, we added an action item and an outcome to the year 2 goals. So what you saw at the workshop, we added Portrait of a Learner, and we added continued work with the Guiding Coalition. So when we get there, we'll speak to that more. So the year 1 is there, where we've been, and Elizabeth has been the one to completely spearhead this work and keep it all going and organized. I kind of was like, I have no more bandwidth, and she's like, I got it. So, and she has it. So it has been moving and grooving. I know we've given some updates on it, but I really just want to reiterate how amazing the committee was, and how some of our efforts to have some greater community and town outreach we saw come together in that room. So some of the messaging through the chamber has been really beneficial. We had business leaders in the room, and they were fantastic and provided great input and feedback for us. So that was a great experience so far.
A lot of responses from the community survey too, from parents, which was really nice.
Yeah, that was huge. 713. Like, you don't ever get that kind of survey result.
What do you attribute that to? Did you message it any differently? Like, because I mean, I would have looked at this as like yet another generic fill-in, you know.
We put it out through the chamber and posted it in more places than just our district messaging. So I think just that further exposure.
Was it just parents that did this, or was it just anyone in the community?
Even graduated students.
Yep.
Okay, well, that makes more sense.
Yep, so it went out to the high school listservs that I have, it went out internally, it went out through the chamber, it went out on the town site. Like, we just grabbed some avenues that we haven't in the past. So that makes me hopeful and is great news when we start to then look at messaging around our high school contracts and different things. So, and one of my goals this year is, and on our goal sheet, is to continue, broadening that communication, because our parents are a small subset of our voters.
Were these all Barrington residents?
So, yep, you have to be
A Barrington resident.
Mhm.
Okay, cool.
Yep, so that was huge, and Kevin Murphy consulted with us the second half of the year to kind of get the work going, and he was amazed at the number of respondents. Like, you would never get that. We had very few at first, and then we pumped it back out, and then the numbers spiked from there. So that was amazing. So the words that the committee landed on are, so what do we want our learners, to have, to possess when they go off to our 3 high schools? We want solid character, a growth mindset, collaboration skills, communication, and we need them to be creative thinkers. So a lot of those soft skills, as we call them, a lot of that input came from those business leaders that are like, you know what, if I have, an eager person in front of me with these skills, I can teach them what they need to know, in my realm. I need this, somebody who can collaborate and has a growth mindset and is a good communicator. So we're pretty excited about that. And this work is going to be incorporated into the BES foyer renovation. So we're really excited about that. From a student artistic perspective, as well as somebody actually who has some, higher level mural artwork that will do that. So we are continuing this work. Infographic needs to be created. We need grade level teams to then look at, what do those characteristics look like for the end of first grade, second grade, third grade, so that we're all working toward the same outcome. Have I said enough about Portrait of a Learner? Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that eventually we're going to ask teachers to report out on how students are doing on these skills. That's a few years down the line, but that's really the end goal, so that we can say, this is what we want students or learners to have when they go off to high school, and report out on that from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade so we can see that growth.
And I know the school board is going to be supportive of that because it is included also, certainly not as a footnote, it's included as one of our guiding documents that we're using to set our focus, I should have said goals, but I'm not saying goals, focus areas for this year and then beyond as we report every year. So thank you for that work. And thank you for everyone on the committee. It was a very passionate committee. If you ever could imagine a group of, what, it's like 20-something people talking about the finite details of the difference between like two words that probably in the dictionary are synonyms of each other. I mean, they took it really seriously and passionately, and with a group of people talking about something that is, could be something that would be considered sensitive. There was not anyone in that room that had an ego. Everyone talked really honestly and shared their ideas honestly, and that's hard to do with that many people, especially if you don't always work together. And so I thank everybody for their time with that. It was great. It was very inspirational.
That's awesome.
I would love to then extend it to do Portrait of an Educator, so that from a hiring perspective and from a PR perspective, yeah. I've seen, only a couple of districts have done it across the state, and it's really powerful. There's a company, I won't name drop on our board meeting, but there's a gentleman who has a company who does the video work behind the work to show what do we mean when we talk about these characteristics in Portrait of a Learner, and you have students get interviewed and they share what it means to them across grade levels, and then you basically do the same type of work where you get your educators together. And so who is a Barrington educator? What does that mean to us? And you put that same work together for educators. So, yeah. It's a lot of work, but it's pretty cool. So I breathe it out loud, but we're not ready to take it on. We have a lot going on right now.
Just add that on,
I
tack that right
know.
onto the goals document.
By September 1st.
Yeah, by September 1st, we're
I
like
think if
modeling
I
like
add
the state.
one more thing, people will be ripping my face off.
Yes, exactly.
So, anyway.
It started out as one page.
Our Town School District Collaborative Committee, Communication Committee met on the 25th. The majority of the meeting, Carrie actually shared the drafted school board goals, which was fabulous. And then also we talked about common vendors where we can start looking at joint contracts for some potential future cost savings. So I gave a list to Connor. He's cross-referencing ones that the town already uses, and if there are things, just for ease of explanation, like a copier lease is something benign, easy to talk about, right? So I know we just redid ours, and so he's looking at, okay, when are ours all due at the town side? And so it's sort of whoever's is due next, we want to be able to then have those conversations with the vendor, like, hey, if we're ready to up the contract, what would it look like if we also looped in the school, or if we were having the conversation vice versa? So we're just trying to take them as their expiration dates come and see if it makes sense to collaborate financially. And then the other piece is possible health insurance collaboration, because we are in the process getting ready to jump into teacher negotiations, and obviously insurance is a pretty big part of a teacher agreement and what that looks like. So to get the information is pretty benign. Signo School Care would do their side, and then we'd get the other piece and look at it. We did just do it about 3 years ago, so a full study was done, so it would be interesting to see where the rates would land 3 years later based on that information. So
I'll just I'm not part of this particular committee, and thank you guys for working. I think it's important that we stay in contact, but I'll bring this back from the TIF committee thing that I'm on, that I think they've renamed it now, the Barrington Center Development Committee, so BCDC.
he did say that.
It's, they're going to do signage for the new Barrington Common, which is the Kalis field that they've purchased. And they're going to be doing a whole new signage package, not just for there, but also looking at putting signage up throughout town, like welcome to Barrington signs, things like that. And one thing that was mentioned was if there could be thought as the school progresses with its signage, that would remain consistent. I think I mentioned that to you, something like that.
Yeah.
And again, like I'm not weighing in, saying, yes, we should do that, or no, we shouldn't do that, but, maybe the school wants to look different than the town does, but on the other side, I can see consistent branding throughout town, that this is indeed Barrington, your home, type of feeling. And so if it's a question of one font or the other, and it's apples and apples.
Comic Sans.
So, Comic Sans. Wingdings throughout town, it's going to look awesome. So, but anyway, just I'll bring that as you guys are.
Yes, thank you, actually, I should have included that, because I did mention it to Connor that you and I had spoke, and he indicated that they were going to stay with the consistency of the signing that we
Perfect.
currently have.
That's great.
So I said, let me know if something changes, and, the consistency is nice, when it kind of brings it all together.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah, and I wanted to make sure I asked him that question before we went forward with the middle school sign, right? If we're going to make a change, then let's make sure we're all communicating that. So, that is fantastic. So progress towards school goals. Obviously, we just had our workshop on the 16th. There's a whole board packet with reflections on all of those goals, so if anybody wants to go back and reflect on the reflections, they're in the last packet. And we're going to look at the year 2 action items tonight. Additional updates, I added a couple pictures there because it was far more impressive in person than it is in these little pictures, but really exciting. George Joy reached out to me and said, hey, what do you think? And of course, we're going to collaborate and be supportive, and so middle school hosted New Hampshire State Police for their active shooter training on site. So it was pretty busy in there for a couple days. And Elizabeth did a great job messaging not only the coaches of the groups that were going on at the time, but making sure that we extended that to families, so they were aware that that was going on, and they weren't wondering why they were. Yeah.
All right,
Well,
what did my kid do now?
yeah. Intimidating to roll in and see all the state trooper, vehicles there, but.
Some people more than others.
Yes, but also for the kiddos who were in the building, that's not a quiet drill.
No.
Right? So there was a lot going on, but she made sure that they were on separate sides of the building, and they were secured, and there were clearly no actual guns with ammunition being shot off in the building, just to be very clear about that. Every time we say we're going to maybe slow down and go a little deeper, we seem to do more. So this team has been out straight for July. I'm hoping people have a little bit of a breather in August. It's not a surprise, because you figure all of the work we did last year, you then have to implement it all. So, with the new professional growth plan comes new teacher evaluation process, and we are tired of doing everything on paper. And, triplicate NCR paper. No, I'm kidding, we don't do that. But that's kind of what it feels like. So that's been my sort of mantra the last couple months, from a systems perspective, technology, paperwork perspective, we're back in the 80s, and it's time to become more efficient. I know I and probably all of us underestimated the brain-heavy load that was going to, the toll it was going to take on all of us, but we'll get there. So we are starting to put a lot of those systems online, which of course then means training and new understanding. So it's been a lot. But like I said, our brains are spinning, but it's healthy spinning. It's a good thing. We'll get there.
What are the themes that Kim Marshall brought to the table? What are this nationally renowned guru?
So your biggies are the Danielson model, which we've been using for years, and then you've got Marshall, and there's, several others. So
I'm not going to pretend. I have no idea what Danielson and Marshall are.
So they're just people who have written systems for how you observe and evaluate teachers effectively. So we had Kim Marshall come in, and Not that we're using the Marshall method exclusively, we're kind of doing a little hybrid, but, you know, he is sort of nationally, not sort of, he is nationally known, has written multiple books around how do you observe and evaluate teachers in the most effective manner, that's not so that you feel like you're just checking a box or jumping through hoops, like meaningful, right? So his approach is, if you think about how many, I'm trying to think of the easiest way. So let's take a middle school language arts teacher, right? So if they have 5 periods a day, think about how many lessons that is over the course of 178 student days, right? So like picture graph paper, and it was like almost 2,000 lessons or something. If you're doing a, you know, so typically what happens in an evaluation process is if you're a new teacher, so you're not tenured, you get 2 formal evaluations, and then you get an end-of-year summative. So yes, administrators are walking through, but that's what you're being evaluated on. 3 snapshots in time over the course of almost 2,000 lessons. So we all have good days and bad days. If I'm only seeing you 3 times, and that's all that's getting documented, right? And there's a pre-observation, and it's a scheduled known thing, like, it's a dog and pony show. Let's just call it what it is. And for some teachers, that's a good thing. Like, I know you're coming, I'm going to make sure I'm thoroughly well-planned, and here we go. For other teachers, that's a nightmare. They get nervous, they get anxious, you see their worst teaching when they know you're coming, right? They would rather it be unannounced. But really, the story there is you're only seeing, formally, 3 lessons out of an entire year. So yes, you're walking through all the time, but when you're walking through, it's not evaluative. So Marshall's approach is, no. That's nonsense. You're not getting enough of a flavor of a snapshot of what's going on. It's not fair to you, it's not fair to the teacher, it's not fair to good instruction, to students, you know, et cetera. So his approach is walkthroughs, mini snapshots, observations, but they're very purposeful and targeted. And there's always feedback. So there's a quick narrative, like, this is what I saw, this is what I didn't see, whatever it may be. And then you still, then you take that information from however many number. He figured, he started with 10, like, that's not really reasonable, and then it came to 8. It just really depends on the size of the staff that you're evaluating, like what makes sense for an administrator with all the other tasks that they have to do. So the mindset there is, I'm going to walk in and out of your room at any old given time, and I'm going to see what I'm going to see. And sometimes it might be a flop, and that's okay, because I'm not there to judge, I'm there to coach and guide. And so if I see something that doesn't sit quite right, I'm going to follow up with you and go, like, what was that? And you're going to then have a great, healthy conversation around that. So it ties in with our shift in our professional growth plan that, yes, this is about the students and academic achievement, but how do you get there? You get there by good instruction and teachers feeling comfortable and confident to problem solve and make mistakes and talk it through and get better. And instead of this sort of like gotcha method, right, which is how evaluation is always viewed. Like, I'm going to write down stuff and now you're either good or bad, you know?
So is this method part of
Our
the new, our new plan?
Yep. So we weren't ready to go full-on mini observations only. So if you're a new, not tenured teacher, you're still going to get some formal, full lesson observation, sit-down feedback. Not to say that once we live it and we as administrators refine our practice, that we may not change that growth plan moving forward. But we wanted it to be, we wanted the teachers to also be comfortable with the change as well. So we had a whole committee, and that's where we landed, was sort of a mix of formal evaluation, but a real emphasis on the mini walkthrough model.
So you've got 3 dog and pony shows in the past, and now that's going away. It's going to be replaced by how many walkthroughs? How many times is the teacher going to see it?
8. Did we land on 8?
We landed for the first-year teacher, be five walkthroughs and one formal, and a summative
So instead of,
for first-year teacher.
so one dog and pony show, 5 unannounced, just wandering through, and then one summative, so 7 check-ins essentially?
And that's the
Doubled it.
formal, like Deanna was talking about, the formal walkthroughs, minis, but then there's other walkthroughs that they'll be doing just very informal, they're not evaluative, but in and out of the classrooms.
Granted, obviously our tenured staff doesn't need as much coaching probably, but what does their evaluation walkthrough bit look like?
So theirs is on their certification cycle, so if they're in year 1 or 2 of their certification cycle, they have a minimum of 2 minis. But don't forget, if either the teacher or the evaluator want to see more, we always have the right to go ahead and do that. So years 1 and 2, they have 2 minis, and then year 3, they'll have the 2 minis, and then the formal and then the summative for the recertification cycle.
We aligned it with when they're due for their certification.
It's also aligned with their professional goals, learning plan, which every 3 years, so then you have those discussions as well. So everything kind of lines up nice and neat, and you have some nice conversations.
So, excuse my ignorance, I'm sorry, but what could a tenured teacher expect in the past as opposed to what they'll see in the future?
Depends on what they chose. If they chose, say, I can't even think of the wording, somebody help me.
It was a peer observation.
Thank you. Yeah. So they could choose to say, sure, come observe me, and you get an evaluation, one,
Yeah,
and a summative.
yeah.
But they could also say, I'm going to do peer observation, or I'm going to do a leadership track, or I'm going to do, and you never saw them. Unless you just went in. But you, from formally, evaluatively, if they chose a different pathway, you never saw them.
Got it.
So,
Well, how much consistency will this now bring for evaluations across the buildings? Like, does it standardize everything for the?
it's completely spelled out, and we even have a column for if you were tenured somewhere else, but you were new to Barrington, right? So you're not a brand-new teacher, you don't need, like, it's my first-year teacher type of observation and coaching. But, you haven't been to Barrington, so we still want to make sure you're
We've got
what
to know
we're
you.
looking for. Yeah.
And how is this all been received in general? Was it?
Yeah, we had cross-grade level teachers on all the committees. They were part of the creation,
Okay.
so.
As well as the union as well. Yep.
Did you have any concerns at all? Were they okay? No? So,
They're actually excited.
why? What got them excited about it? I'm just curious.
The coaching aspect of it,
Yeah.
the instructional piece about uplifting our knowledge and our instructional practices, that everybody's going to get seen on some level. And as we talk through the mini observations, they haven't been through it, but they're like, oh, this could kind of eliminate, like Deanna was talking about, that, oh my God, somebody's coming and I'm going to be thrown up every morning for 2 weeks, that anxiety piece. And being able to see different snapshots along the way in many different areas. I mean, if you teach, in the elementary school, you teach all the content areas. It would be nice to see, to be able to see that.
Excellent. Thank you.
I look forward to hearing more about how that is going. I think it's easy to look at something on paper and say, this looks really great, even for the most experienced teachers. But I'm sure you'll be getting quite a bit of feedback as will principals once the process actually starts. So I'd love to get follow up on how you guys feel that it's going before, because I could imagine us discussing it at the summer meeting next year. Not that I want to even think about that, we're still in summer. But it would be great to hear about that progressively as we go along. Is it scheduled for agenda items on this school board packet?
We can stick it in there.
Yeah, and I have no suggestion. I would just love to see it in here so that the principals know that to come with that feedback so that they're prepared, so it's not a surprise. I know you guys love surprise questions.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and the feedback, I think, will be twofold. It'll be
Yeah.
one, how is the new process feeling from a teacher and an administrative perspective? And then, how is the new actual software? Because it'll be, online now as opposed to the stacks of paper that come to me. And the legwork that it takes to keep track of, okay, who's in their recertification year, who's tenured, who's not, how many observations do they need? So now, all of that, as you would think it should have been all along, is going to be uploaded in our Power School system so that as a principal, you'll be able to go in, pull up a teacher, know when their certification is due, know which, how many minis they need, like it's all going to be fed and done for you. Imagine that.
It'll be exciting because once you get in there and see that data historically over time, probably not year one, but year 2 and 3, you'll be able to think of these amazing ways to use that information.
Well, and that's the other thing is, right now, if you want any historical knowledge of that process for a teacher, you have to come down here and look in their personnel file, right? And go through and then gain that. Whereas now, you'll be able to go in and see, what that history has been. We are excited about that. Completed exit interviews, the overarching themes there were, of course, retirement. Headed to a new district for a higher salary, and just simply choosing to leave the field. Those were the overarching themes. We didn't have a lot this year. I did also do a little cross-check with last year's, and they were the same types of themes. So nothing, no
surprises?
random outliers there, no surprises. Yep. I met with Scott Shepherd on the 25th. For people who follow Barrington Connections, I am not on Facebook, so I was not aware, but it was shared with me that he's been doing kind of like a series of spotlights on town information and events and just trying to spread knowledge across the community. So he emailed me and we set up a meeting. I was like, yes, let's chat. So I shared the demographic study with him, also the sort of pared down one that I went and did at the select board meeting that evening, whatever night that was last year. He did, as promised, it is Tuesday. He emailed me what he intends to post so that I can give him feedback. And we had a really great, lengthy, thoughtful conversation. So I thought it was wonderful that he reached out to collaborate, and that is, he's doing the best job that he can to just share factual information.
Right, he wants to get good information
Yes.
out rather than
Speculative?
speculative, and, he's not going to be afraid to necessarily poke the bear if he's getting information that
Yes.
he feels
Yes.
is less than, it's like the things is that, people talk about taxes going up, and, he dives into the fact of, it's not a simple thing of, when you look at what the value of a house is and services it requires, and, he's starting to see the most of these houses in this town now that are being built for $800,000, $900,000 or $1 million are not going to be starter homes. So when they're not starter homes, there's going to be less impact of kids onto the thing. So he's digging into that kind of stuff, which is actually
Yeah, it's really interesting. So we had a lot of clarifying questions for me, such as, hey, Deanna, why do your enrollment numbers say this, but when I go to the State Department of Education, it says this? And I was like, oh, well, that's an easy one. State Department reports October 1 count, period. And I update mine all throughout the year because we're trying to ensure that we have the best numbers we can when we go to budget. So it was a great factual conversation. So I haven't had time to go through and read what he sent me, and he intends on doing multiple posts. So I think, given it's, one of our goals is to reach out communication-wide to the greater community, just by luck, he's going to help and support that. So that's great. I mean, most people know I'm not a Facebook fan, but that's because social media can be used negatively, and I'm hopeful that this will be, a nice, factual, just point of
Yeah,
information.
he spends a fair amount of time working on planning issues and that kind of stuff, and I thought that he had a lot of good information.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he was able to dispel some wives' tales about that, so.
Yeah, and it seems like, first of all, thank you very much for making time for him. I don't think he has any, to be clear, any official capacity
Right.
for doing this. He's just a private citizen that's lending his opinion to the greater community through a public channel for Barrington Connections. So just, and I think it's very altruistic, and I've not read up all of his stuff, but from what I've heard, it's very flat and very informative, and doesn't have any access to grind, so that's great. What I would be wary of any member of the community wanting to take up hours of your time seeking information and thinking that they can get unfettered access. You do what you can by wanting to be involved in the community, inform the community. But if all of a sudden you had 20 Scott Shepherds come to you and say, I would like to sit down with you for a couple of afternoons to find out we'd be in trouble.
I think he stepped down from the budget committee on the town side too, and that is going to be a big hole to fill, and that's not disrespect, but he would look at stuff, and not necessarily from just, say, cutting perspective. In some cases, he would advocate that you're not spending enough money on something, so.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. The last piece, and this is a great place that maybe we pencil those sort of follow-ups in. This is by no means done or exhaustive, so we've started to, so all of the upcoming school board meetings are listed, and then who's going to be present and what the what the things are that the things we know are coming up. We know when nominations are, we know when, new board members are gonna potentially be here and we have to reorganize. We know when Champions for Children happens, or when I need to ask for permission to hire for the summer. So let's relieve our brain space a little bit and pencil those things in now so we know. And then also, we're going to try rotating through principals at the board meetings, because it does get repetitive and at times and a little exhausting to hear 3 full-on reports in one sitting. So instead of all 3 of them being here, clearly through the budget process, more so people will be here. But from a regular report out perspective, you'll still get a written report, so that we'll all still be in communication and in the loop. And I think you'll actually find that you'll get more information that way, because we have a template that is not the same, but similar to the one I've been using the last couple of times. And then we'll really be able to focus on that one building while we're here, and give that building and that principal a little more time and question and answer opportunity. So again, we
You
can...
don't have to sit here for this whole time and not
not
participate. So yes, I think this is great. Thank you for following up on that.
And, if it's not working for us, we adjust. It's just a thought to become more efficient and really honor people's time in the seat. Anytime we make a change, it feels a little uncomfortable in the moment, so I think we should sit with it for a bit and then, see how it goes, probably post-budget process, right? Like,
It's a great
okay.
place to start. It's a great formalized
Yeah.
place to start. I wish I would have had something like this when I first came on the board. I think it's helpful for
And I'm
board
gonna
members,
keep
like all around. Great.
adding, this was just a quick, off the top of my head, things that I know as we
Were other
jump.
leadership part of making the decisions for some of the reporting items?
What?
What do you mean reporting items?
Like the other agenda items, or some of these like consideration from other leadership of like when things would make sense, or?
We haven't gone there yet, so
Oh, okay.
all we have put in there are the big picture
major-
things that I
Okay.
know happen every
Sorry,
year.
jumping ahead.
No, that's okay. You know, things like the Oyster River Lottery, things like the mid-year Director of Student Services report never happens at mid-year, so let's commit to putting it there. Like, March is too late, folks, because then all of a sudden you've got the end-of-year report. But it's wild to me how, I hate to use the word disruptive, but I will, how disruptive and time-consuming, all-consuming the budget process is. It's like, all of a sudden, you know, we get on this roll of sharing information, and then it all comes to a halt, because then all we're doing is budget for so long. So I'm hoping this keeps us a little more on point and organized and efficient. And then, if you want a regular thing added, you know, let me know, and I will, as we start to get into creating agendas for September, October, obviously this list is just gonna grow. The other thing that we did, so your report content for principal, superintendent, and SAU staff is also there. And if you want headings added as we start to share, we will absolutely add certain headings. So the principals will be regularly reporting out on enrollment, attendance, and progress toward MTSS A and B and community.
This is freaking awesome. Like, this, like, gives a seasonality to the board. It's really, really
Love
cool.
it. It's really exciting.
Just, you know, no one's watching, and, you know, maybe some of them do a look back, but this is, even though it's in the board, it's in here. Even if there's a board, even though it's in the board packet, this is as you said, a fluid document, and that folks should refer to the agendas on a, you know, that's what's gonna be discussed, not necessarily this could change.
Oh,
for internal
absolutely.
use. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. This is awesome. Good job.
In addition to that, we also created a schedule for the School Board Advisory Budget Committee, partly out of the past members' request, but also just looking at the bigger picture. So, you know, I know they kind of stress a little bit, as they should, with like, ooh, you know, we need to meet, and that needs to be posted, and where are we gonna meet, and how, and when, and so we don't want it to be an afterthought, you know? We want it to be, and we want more people to be. And we want more people.
On it,
So,
would be helpful.
there's already a draft sitting on Chris's desk for me to look at, because I said I want this out early, so we're gonna post it, and, you know, ideally, we would want somebody here when we do that initial overview, so they're hearing it from start to finish, and we're not trying to catch them up.
How does this fit into, this schedule fit into with how you're gonna present the schedule for us? Yeah, meetings.
So I took the budget timeline, and
Yep.
when we're, I'm sorry, I should have actually included the budget timeline in here too. So, took the budget timeline
Yep.
and looked at what, I'm not thinking budget right now, what codes are being discussed on what night,
Yep.
and to make sure that the right people are in the room to hear all of those pieces. And so they can, on here, you can see like which areas are being discussed.
Right, so I'm just picking October 22nd, where it says budget workshop 1100, 1200, 2100. When do we see that versus there? Is that?
So this is, they're just observers. This is the school board, that's the night that
Okay.
we will do the budget workshop.
And we'll see all that information beforehand, to get it all in a binder,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
the,
I think what Rick is,
I guess my point.
wants the data long before he wants to review stuff.
Yeah, I guess that, you know, so what the town budget committee does is, like, if I'm gonna present my budget next Monday night on the Tuesday, because they happen to pick Tuesdays, the Tuesday before, they would have all my stuff. I would be invited to their budget meeting, and if they had any particular questions, well, hey, chief, why this, or
Sure.
this? So then that gave them the week to kind of be prepared for that section, so that when the selectmen got it on Monday night, when I came in and presented it, then the chairman of the budget.
I think historically, we get the proposed budget like a month in advance.
So what I guess my point was, is giving them also the opportunity maybe to take pressure off them to be able to look at this and have questions available, so that when they come in, even as observers, they should be able to participate in the process.
So historically, they have, and this is for you all to decide,
Yep.
not me, because it's an advisory committee, right? So historically, we haven't given them their budget books until you all have fussed through it and decided where you land. So, like, that would be a discussion that you would all want to have if you want to do that differently. So, historically, they don't get their budget books until the final budget on the November 19th. So, but by the 19th, we want to have kind of pared down all the wishes, wants, asks, necessities, and then they get it, and then they come back with questions and clarification, and then we continue to kind of adjust and massage it. So they haven't, historically, the advisory committee has not chimed in the initial report outs from each of the
Interesting.
department heads, I guess.
They go over the kind of the finished product. By the time that they see it, it's sort of, we've honed it down, and then it's sort of like the school administration and the board is presenting it to them, and then they bring in their own questions.
So how much time typically do they have from the time you give it to them?
Couple weeks.
See, and, to me, that's, and I'm not trying to speak for them, but a $28 or $30 million budget, and they got 2 weeks to look at something and help make decisions on how we should be spending that money. I'm a huge proponent of, you're giving it to us to look at, give it to them at the same time.
Well, they'll have it, because so that we've never formed the committee early enough to include them way back at the initial presentation.
But that's my point, we should try to do that, and they,
Yes.
when you give me a binder with all that stuff in it, they should get the exact same thing. Whether the board chooses to allow them to weigh in at that time is a discussion we should have later, but they should be able to have that. I don't think it's fair for them to have a budget package for 2 weeks with $28 million in it. I mean,
So they have access to it. We don't give them a binder, but we can. I mean, it's in the public packet, starting on the 15th.
right, but I
So-
mean, I think that it's, if you're giving us a document with all this stuff in, which I hope you're gonna, so that I have time to look at this, they should be entitled to the same thing. They should be able to, if you got somebody that wants to sit down and just go ahead and read ahead and have some questions, so it's their turn to, and maybe when that piece gets discussed tonight, they go, I had a question about such and such a salary, and maybe the question gets answered. Maybe they sit there and scratch it out and go, oh, that got answered. But I struggle with the idea that they get 2 weeks to look at a $28 or $30 million budget. I don't think that's fair to them, and I think that puts a lot of pressure on them to go.
It is a lot.
If
So-
you're asking them to reasonably weigh in on what they believe, that if you want if you want the budget committee to have, and I don't mean to use the word teeth, but if you want them to have meaningful involvement and real input, they should be looking at it from the beginning, and maybe that takes some pressure off them to say, boy, I don't have to get through this book this thick, and that's just my opinion. I think they should get it from the beginning.
To Rick's point, I think it's a discussion we can have at a later date, and I think to amplify and echo, I guess, I think that it would be good to have them have copies of the ongoing work as they can watch things progress from the moment we get the budget till the end. However, I do not believe it's in the best interest of the district to have an additional 5-person appointed board have the same input along the budget process as the school board. I think the school board has been elected to create that budget, however large it may be. If we want to have a specific time along the process for the advisory budget committee to then bring questions during that time. That would be, I think that'd be welcome, but I do not think we should turn a 5-member board into a 10-person board to draft the school budget. But that's just me.
It sounds like there's further discussion, and so it's not technically on the agenda for this time, and I'd love for it to be a 5-person discussion too, since Maura's not here. So I would request that we add this to a future meeting as its own line item as an agenda.
I think it ought to be on the next agenda, so that we decide what we're gonna do, because in fairness of trying to, I don't know how many people were on it last year coming back.
It was
but-
pretty last year, but yeah, yep.
Hopefully one of them's retiring.
No, stop it. So yeah, we can discuss and hear also from Moira's point of view and make some decisions then, but I think we could, in the interest of time, we can move
Yeah,
on to that.
and the committee's always had access to the initial proposal. I think it's more the messaging around, like, when do we want your questions and input, right? Is it throughout? Is it once?
Yeah, because they
the
do
board has-
receive all the same information.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily wrong for them if, I certainly don't want to speak for them, but I don't think it's necessarily wrong for them to be sitting in the room through the whole process, if it makes sense to do that, and be listening to the presentation so that they can make reasonable recommendations to the board when
They
it's
do.
over on what
They
they
do
think.
that.
They do.
Okay.
That is, that's.
Unless they can't come,
Right.
unless they
Yeah,
literally
yeah.
can't make it. But yeah, no, they're invited, it's their public
Yeah,
use.
to be honest with you, Rick, like, I think and again, my memory's fuzzy from year to year to year, but the struggle is to get the folks
Yeah.
poor populated, as you well imagine.
Yep.
And then the folks that are committed, that are able to, do show, and then they'll raise questions toward the end of the meeting. I had a question about this, and
But I
then.
think giving them the budget book from the beginning, what little bit extra money it's gonna end up costing us to do that, they should just get
sure.
the same information we do from the beginning, and maybe that gets more interest, because maybe these people aren't gonna sit here and go, man, I got 2 weeks to go through a
And I might have
budget."
misspoke about the, Carrie just was reminding me, like, it might be 2 weeks. I'm not trying to remember from the point we finalize a budget to the point they get to actually weigh in on it. Like, what's the term?
So they usually get their books middle to up to Thanksgiving time, and then they usually don't take their vote until after the hearing.
So there's more than a couple of weeks. I misspoke. I was.
And the point of giving them specified dates is, one, to show, like, we want your input. It's a
Yeah.
lot of information. And also, last year, when some people were reaching out to ask about it, they wanted to know what the time commitment
Yeah.
was.
Yeah,
And
schedule.
so, that's when I just was like, okay, like, let's look at the budget timeline we've created for ourselves, and then let's make sure they're there from start to finish. So this is actually a more inclusive and bigger approach than we've taken in years
And
past.
to the point, God, you're right, the town looks at it the same way. The 5 selectmen were elected to put the budget together, but that's an advisory budget committee as well, because you either have an advisory budget committee, you have an elected budget committee. If you have an elected budget committee, then the 5 of us have no say in the budget. The elected budget committee does. But they do solicit input from the budget committee, and not necessarily do they always agree with that. And again, in the last 8 or 10 years, the budget committee on the town side, in some cases, advocated to spend more money on certain issues. Yeah, we've had some pretty conservative ones over the years that, let's not buy that, this or that. But for the most part, the last 8 or 10 years, that budget committee's been very active on the town side, and like I said, in some cases, have stood there and said, well, I don't think the fire chief has really shown us that we should do this, but in some cases, they've also stood there and says, we've got to put more money in our roads, and I'm just using that
Yeah.
example. So, again, the select board, at the end of the day, they're the ones, we're elected, and just like we are, at the end of the day, whatever that bottom line is for the budget, it's going to be on us. But I would hope that the budget committee takes an active role in helping to try to advocate for things that they think the school should be doing, and also if we shouldn't be doing something.
I think, I think there's only room for improvement, for sure.
Yeah.
And, But that said, I think like, and I hate to say it, but Mr. Toddy, for instance, he brings a fine-tooth comb to the budget when he goes through it. And he's brought questions up in the past that we have, for sure, believe it or not, missed, and things that we didn't miss and that he's been corrected on. And he's weighed on things, I remember in years past where he weighed in on issues simple as like we were going to contract services out, and he thought, why are you doing that? You want to own this yourself, type of
Right.
thing. So I mean, there is that go.
And you want that. You
definitely-
really do want
So,
that.
none of us are.
We've had some great committee members in the past of really,
And I'm thinking out loud that perhaps you'll have more interest that people can say, all right, I'm gonna get this at the same time as everybody else does, and I'm gonna have, instead of, whether it's a month or a month and a half, I'm gonna have 2 or 3 months like they do.
Okay. So, up next is the review and approval of the year 2.
yes, so, like I said, we added a couple of things to it, so you have that new printout in front of you, so don't refer to the one in your packet, Carrie, or online.
So it's the one that was printed, right?
Yeah,
It's a
that was it.
two-sided?
Yes,
Two-sided color,
Okay.
not the, okay.
So we will go through the action items. We can go into the outcomes if you like, but really that's just what you're going to see as a result of doing the action items. So year 2 of the 5 years, so we looked at, where we landed after year 1 and where we are headed in order to meet our overarching 5-year goals. So in the area of operations, I'm going to share that one, and then I'm going to stop talking, and other people are going to jump in and do the other column. So not a lot of surprises. In this column, research the timeline and requirements for a bond process for a potential BES expansion. We just want to be ready in case those numbers do happen to spike, so that we don't get in the position of having modulars out in our fields that will potentially not go away and will be very inefficient energy, from an energy perspective, buildings. Clear, consistent, data-driven communication to the greater community around this year's budget process. Actually goes right in line with what we were just talking about. We have a lot of warrant articles on the table this year, and so the, general operating budget may not, will most likely not necessarily be the point of, concern. It's, we have a teacher contract due, the 2 high school contracts, our transportation contract is due, and our English language arts curriculum cycle is on the docket as well.
Which for those in public is probably one of the most expansive besides math as well, so just,
Yeah. And with the dyslexia law and the science of reading research, and we have not had a specific program in Barrington for the decade I've been here. So, we've had vocabulary programs, we've had phonics programs, phonemic awareness programs that are new to us as of this last year or so, but we have not had a, like, when you think about math, you think like, oh, you have a textbook, albeit it may be online these days, and there's workbooks, but we haven't had a prescriptive English language arts program in the district in, I don't know how long, predates me. So that typically, costs anywhere from $250,000 to $400,000 for a district this size. I know when we implemented math 9 years ago, we did it over a 2-year span because of the budgetary impact, so we may have some decisions to make as we move forward with that. So along with researching the bond process, we also want to continue to engage with an architectural firm to solidify potential plans for BES so that, again, we're not, starting from scratch if and when the time comes. So we've had a couple of meetings and conversations with them, and we have another one coming up to share the additional thoughts as we've gone and walked through and have really looked at classroom spaces and what the need is. And actually, when Scott Shepard was here, we talked a lot about that, because it's not necessarily that we need an addition because our numbers are busting at the seams. Our building is busting at the seams because how we teach has changed dramatically, and student need has changed dramatically. So you don't do your instruction in a 16 to 20 student classroom exclusively any longer. You need small group instructional spaces. We've got a lot of behavioral needs. We've had behavior programs added, and
And that's where I see some Scott and kind of the work
Yes.
he's trying to do, helping us, because
Agreed.
he's, and I think that, I've said this the last few months, that if you were, there's no way you're gonna go out and convince the voters that you need to put an X million dollar addition on the school because we're out of space, because without explaining to them, we need space because of the programs we have to implement, or and that when you start explaining to people that if we can do this program here for our own students, it's cheaper than if we have to send our students out of district to do it, that's what will convince the voters to stand there and say, okay. But if you stand there and go, we gotta add 7 classrooms, and the Rick Walkers of the world are sitting there going, wait a minute.
But your numbers haven't
Your numbers haven't increased to that. So that's the message we gotta get to the voters, and I think that Scott is the kind of guy with the stuff he's trying to do. Those are the kind of things he wants to work on is.
Yeah, that was a big component of our conversation that day.
And if I can add that at our last joint committee meeting, that was a huge topic of discussion and some other new ideas that we've never done before for outreach to the non-enrolled family community. So we've thought of some really good ideas that I'm sure we'll come to the board with, but that'll be up and coming, so I think it's exciting, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, a lot of conversation.
But it's two-sided, because I do think that, yes, the way that we teach has definitely changed, but I think that anyone living in a row houses being built in Barrington could also understand the narrative that maybe not today, maybe not this semester, but in the near future, we are going to need more classrooms at one of these schools, and it better be proactive. I'm very concerned about the idea of, I think this Mr. Shepherd guy seems great and well-intentioned, but if we are outsourcing our messaging to a layman on the, whoever it might be, not this guy in particular, that scares the crap out of me. We should be doing this ourselves and understand why we're doing it and being able to get our message out without relying on a good-hearted citizen to do it for us, right?
Absolutely.
So-
But if he can help get that message
Yes,
out.
nothing against this,
Right.
what he's doing at all.
No good
Supportive.
communications plan only involves one person, right? So it's a group effort, so I think that's great.
Okay. Joe is looking at researching an electronic inventory system to capture district-wide, the life cycle, repair, and replacement of equipment and infrastructure. You know, when you go to larger districts, like, everything is barcoded, like, you know, what you...
That's something I'd like to see as part of a town collaboration. I think that's ideal for if we can get this up and running and off the ground, say, hey, this is great, then finding a way to include the town infrastructure in the same thing.
Agreed. It comes with a pretty hefty price tag, so that would be if we're gonna do it, then...
Yep, you join up together and,
Yep.
I think it bears at least looking at from a collaborative standpoint to see if it can work.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I would imagine that, the bigger the job, hopefully, and you're in town already, we would be able to capitalize on that. Yep, so he's gonna start looking at some companies, what that would entail and what the potential price tag is. And we may have to start small, with, like, let's just do, kind of the more expensive items, like your boilers and your, things like that at first, and then get it down to, your laptops. So it's a big undertaking.
And again, I've had some conversations, I reminded him again the other day when I saw him that I am also very passionate about looking at getting air conditioning, and seeing what that's going to involve for us into these buildings. And, he indicated that the state is making, or the federal government's making some changes in the direction of, that you may be not going to school because of heat days.
Heat days, yep.
So that he's hoping that if that kind of falls into play, that there may end up being perhaps some federal funding. But I still think that we ought to try to get on the forefront of
Well,
this.
you can shared action item number 5.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry, you spoke for me. Operations number 5.
Oh, down here, okay.
So number 5 is research the ability to provide climate control in all whole group student instructional spaces. So we worded it that way because you can, but financially, to air condition with large units, your entire building is not necessarily practical. So we're going to start at the ECLC because many of those rooms already have air conditioning for a variety of reasons. One being that the SAU used to be located there, and then you've got a server room there and things that need to be air conditioned. And then we also, that it tends to be our most medically fragile population, as they mature. Not to say that medical conditions go away, but as systems, your body matures, right, the need is, gets more stable and is lessened. So we're going to start at the ECLC in looking at mini splits and how we can make those, I say, whole group instructional spaces, right? Because we don't have that many days that are horribly hot. And so you can certainly not take your small group out and go to a sweaty, smaller space and do your small group in a climate-controlled classroom on that particular day. So we figured that would be the place to start, is your whole group spaces.
Nobody wants to stay in ECLC, nobody wants to get promoted.
Field trips to ECLC.
Right. Yeah. So continue to expand technology integration and systems administration support. So that's one of the technology action items as we have created those additional positions at the middle school. We'll get to those job descriptions in a little bit. And implementing infrastructure improvements to include software and hardware to support the 5-year goals. So that's, again, from a technology perspective. And then there's two more action items on the backside, and then we won't need the backside again. So formalizing the data governance plan, and of course, we would be completely remiss if we did not add to seek and secure grant opportunities to support facility, safety, and security needs, such as adapting our lobbies to become more secure. And that was actually part of the conversation that I had with Sergeant Barber and Deputy Chief today around some of those. We did secure our entries and vestibules, but they're not as secure as they should be, for sure. Like, we have some of our sliding windows that don't lock, they're not shatter resistant, so there are still some steps that we can take from a lobby perspective to make things more secure without making them unfriendly.
And they're still offering quite a few of those security upgrade grants, so that'll be great to utilize our new operations position for that.
Lots to do in that area. All right, academics.
All right, so MTSSA, or academics. So at the heart of this goal is, of course, student learning. So how do we get there? So our action items for this year is maintaining our math programming. We do have the implementation plan that I gave you all, I think a few months ago. The implementation plan is a 5-year plan, so we are continuing to look at it. We will be looking at actually on Thursday to make sure that we are going in the direction that we need in the support for our teachers and our learners. And we will, still include our consistent and documented focused walkthroughs to ensure that, the program is being used with integrity as we move through the years. So we will pilot ELA programs coming up this year and continue the ELA committee. They will meet a few times this coming year to check in on the pilot. Yeah, no, not this one.
What an efficient committee.
To check in on the pilot, how are we doing, what do we need for supports, and then, of course, choosing that program for the fall. We will review and update, which we've been doing, our Tier 1, 2, and 3 processes and procedures. Execute the professional educator evaluation plan, which is what Deanna was speaking to before. And review and evaluate social studies curriculum instruction. Social studies just is next on deck for the curriculum cycle. So we'll be looking at their new state standards that have come out, and they've also added a civics portion to that, so we want to make sure that's all there, and all the curriculum documents, scope and sequence. And also, science and social studies teachers also have an ELA component according to Common Core standards, so we want to make sure that they're also hitting those standards within the realm of the science of reading research. So we'll be doing that work with the Social Studies Committee K through 8 next year. And that's it. I know there's only 5, but they're big. And they take a lot of people a lot of time to kind of move forward.
One is the entire district professional educator evaluation plan. So yes, I mean,
yes.
I can see how, yes.
That would be one.
Okay, great, thank you. Are we gonna do reserve questions till the end, or will I just have them just scroll through the rest? You good? All right, so all right, behavior.
All right.
MTSS behavior.
MTSSB, so action items for year 2. Number 1, continue to define and refine MTSSB systems to continue to see yearly growth within the DESA data. And that's really more aimed at kind of interventions after we get the first, the beginning of the year data for DESA, or even using spring to start earlier in the year. Number 2, to continue to enhance and advise staff of robust resources available. I think this is an area, actually, we met with our MTSSB committee today, where there's so much stuff out there, and we do provide, resources for teachers and advisors to use with their students for these things, but really just kind of making it as easily accessible to them as possible and kind of going through them on our own and giving them the best of what's out there. And also BES and ECLC have a library that they can use tied to the themes with books. And a lot of, staff who've been there for a few years know that, but newer staff we're seeing might not know that. So just, reminding people what's out there and what's available to them and giving it to them in the most user-friendly way. Number 3, continue uniform data entry in PowerSchool and begin using Performance Matters to better measure student behavior data and provide appropriate systems of support. So the leadership team talked about this a little bit last week. We're now all entering any, behavior incidents or any administrative consequences in the same way into PowerSchool, which is what we use. And now we're going to start using the Performance Matters piece of PowerSchool as well, which basically creates kind of an early warning indicator system for students that might be falling through the cracks a little bit. Obviously, we know, students who have, high needs behaviorally or attendance issues regularly, but we've added things like grades and, tardies and things like that to that, and we can get what's called a baseball card pop up on our screen every day when we log in and just be, say, hey, you might want to check in on this kid. So just using the data we have more effectively. Number 4, formalize student and family support team's purpose and mission. That's a continuation of what that group was doing last year. I know they're going to engage the police department with that as well. And finally, number 5, communicate and implement uniform attendance expectations, procedures, and policies to really work on getting kids back in school more regularly and working with families who are struggling to do that.
Great, thank you.
And in community, we're certainly trying to continue to build on not just our relationship within our building communities, but broadening the relationships outside of just a school-based community. We kind of talked about it. Deanna mentioned it a few different times already, just between things that have happened already with the chamber or the Portrait of a Learner, but ways in which we're trying to engage a broader community. So our action items first would be to sort of review, reflect, refine the SAU communication chart that was established last year, which gives direction for actually for all levels, from SAU to building-based, to administration-based, to teachers, just what the expectations are and what platforms should be utilized so that there's more uniformity to it. We feel like we need to continue to find different ways, and we'll start with this collection of newsletters. We feel like the SMORE or Canva newsletters, sort of the one-page flyers, seem to be families are really receptive to that, right? Sort of putting all that information in one snapshot, but trying to focus on some of what we see as our critical areas. So attendance, behavior, our multi-tiered systems of supports. What does that mean? Trying to help people understand what that all means. We also recognize that at all of the schools, we have amazing attendance at concerts and plays and performances, but when it comes to engaging our community in more educational type situations or venues, that we struggle. So we want to continue to sort of push that envelope, and whether it's an ELA curriculum night or a math curriculum night or a STEAM night, like what are the ways that we can get families in to engage with their kids educationally. Number 4 is just to continue, as Deanna talked about earlier, when we did the survey for the Portrait of a Learner, right, that it took just the thought of going to the chamber, to the town, to all the different places to sort of broadcast that message out, so that we are communicating not just to our school-based population, but to the town as a whole, because I forget percentagely what it is, but there is a vast larger percentage of families or residents in Barrington do not have kids in school. And we need to make sure that we are communicating effectively in terms of gaining their support. And then lastly, just the whole work behind Portrait of a Learner. It is a community-based effort, right? It impacts everybody. It is how we prepare our students to be global citizens, which inevitably has an impact on our entire community. So we want to make sure that work is continued and brought forward.
Thank you all for sharing. Does any feedback from the board at this point?
Very thorough. So like if you don't know what the plan is for next year, after reading this, it's just, I sit here trying to find a question. I don't have a question. A lot of work.
Very aggressive, a very aggressive goal. So I applaud you all for agreeing to so many goals, and I love seeing the amount of basis for things that will in the future be able to be tracked by data. So in the past, I know the board has given feedback about less, in conjunction with the touchy-feely stories that we hear, how can we also outreach to the community to support efforts that we're doing, or to prove a point of why we need things, et cetera. So I like that there's going to be that support of data, but not data that our administrators then have to spend 5 hours creating themselves. And I know that's an investment for the district, but I think that only does us benefit in improving scores across the board, improving attendance, et cetera, et cetera. So I like seeing that in here, so thank you very much.
Before we just close it out, because it dovetails really into the next agenda item. At the closing of our last meeting, I mentioned to Jeff something about updating our dashboard, and he said for me to come up with some cocktail napkin requests, which, could we, in broad strokes, I won't mention it during the next agenda item, but let's do it now. Could you guys come up with a means of tracking progress on this, on the dashboard?
Yes, let me think that through.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you what to do.
No, yeah.
I'm asking you, figure out what data you want to share with the community that demonstrates progress or lack thereof with the 5-year goals that you guys have
How
agreed upon.
regularly are you thinking?
What's that?
How regularly are you thinking?
I don't know.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah.
I want to be able to, well, how's the school doing? Go look at our dashboard, it's right there, right? That type of thing. And I'm not saying we're up to the second, I'm saying it's,
A live report.
you know what I mean?
Well, so I'm thinking, there's so much information that we gather, but we've never done it. So the reason this excites me, right? A variety of reasons. But you can see all of the information that's hyperlinked in there.
Yep.
And we talked about this a little bit last time, we've set 5-year goals in the past, but we've never communicated what does year 1 look like, what does year 2, 3, 4, 5 look like, right? What are our sort of marching orders along the way? So certainly, what people will have access to, we haven't created it yet, because I also want to create a series of links that, and I already talked to Connor about this, and he's more than happy to put it on their website. So I want the greater community to be able to not have to dig through our school website, because if you're not a parent and you're not used to navigating a school website, right, you want something that's very linear, succinct, like I'm looking at the budget, I want that, I don't want to dig for it. So trying to determine those high-level topics, and it's just going to be a link in the words. No graphics, nothing fancy, no fluff, right? Click on this and go directly to that information. We already have so much out there that shows what we've done. So we have the reflections on the year 1. And we have the entire budget process from last year, and last year was the first time we did a 5-year budget lookout, right, that tied to our goals. So I want to grab all that stuff and make a succinct list that people can click on to get right to it. So I'll have to think through how we can show incremental progress of these action items along the way.
It's just, I think the
But
academics.
it's not a number, right?
Well, no, but some of it is, the academics. So we've pledged to, have kids, grow one grade level of progress every year. Like what percentage, 95% of them in any case. Did we do that this last year for every grade? Did every grade do that?
Full year, no.
Okay, well, that should be on the data dashboard,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But you had some really good news as far as the MTSSB data, right?
Yep.
That should be on the data dashboard, right? So it paints a pretty accurate picture of our successes and our failures, right? And I think that's what I think it's.
Yeah, so from a data perspective, we can certainly do it beginning of year and mid-year, and then end of year, you're going to get the full reflection anyway. So we can certainly start there.
And I think that I've been consistent for over the years, is like, I don't give a crap what data points you guys pick, right? You set your goals, now you pick the data points you guys want to pick that reflects. I'm not saying, cherry pick, these make us look really good, right?
You need them all.
And I know you need them all, so that when I feel comfortable to ask, like, how are our kids doing, I can comfortably say, just go look, we're being very transparent about it, this is where we're at. Warts and all,
That's right.
that is what it is. And the other stuff is just, that's how you represent, progress and community outreach. Good luck. But I'm saying, here's our 5-year goals, and community outreach is one of them for over 5 years, and here's what we've done year 1. Knock those off. That just shows, allows somebody in one spot to take a temperature of how we're doing, not just our students are performing, but the district as a whole is performing, right?
Yeah, so we can absolutely start with, not this document, but the bigger picture of this document, right? That has the 5-year goals at the top, and this is just the end of it. So we can link the bigger full document, and then link the reflections from this past year of where we landed on year 1, and then do year 2 separately, and then at a minimum do a mid-year check-in with the academics. And so that people can not dig for it, and you can just say, hey, check this link out, it's all right there. Also, a quick, easy link to our newsletters, right? We have a whole history of district newsletters just sitting there, if people wanted to look. I think it's hard to navigate any school's website at times. If you don't know which drop down to look in, it can get frustrating to see where all that information is. And people aren't looking for all of that, what's important to the larger community who maybe doesn't have kids, as a taxpayer, how are our schools doing? It's a huge part of my bill, and I want to be able to look quickly and easily.
One thing I do like about the town's website is they have that, Ask the Town section, or whatever, I can't remember what it is, but it's like, whatever the topics du jour from Barrington Connection or wherever, you can just literally click on, is it true you're eliminating Co-Brown from the, and it's right there on the front page of their website. You click on it, no, that is not the case. It is the rumor going around town this, we have blah, 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 blah. And so it saves you from fielding 10 million emails about the same thing when there's a simple, it's right on the website.
Yeah.
What's the budget for the school this year? Click, there it is.
Right there. Yeah.
Thanks, Fred. Jeff, you got that? There's your napkin. Yeah.
It's all here.
All right, I think we can move on to the additional input from the July 16th workshop session.
Move on from or move to?
Move to.
Okay. That was kind of part of it.
Oh, yeah.
So, anything else? There was nothing left from thoughts and wonderings from our parking lot sticky note from that meeting. So I think those meetings are a lot to digest, and I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any lingering thoughts.
Yeah, it was up on the screen.
You had stickies in a pen, and I said, hey, anything that yeah.
Garfield cartoons on his.
Dartboard, yeah. So I just want to make sure that there aren't any lingering thoughts, questions, desires from that evening. I think we kind of
The food was
captured it.
really good.
Great,
The
I'm
food
glad
was
the food
good.
was good.
Freezy salad was
watermelon,
have to do it
cucumber
next
one.
time.
Watermelon.
I think I accidentally signed the board up to be the ones to do the food next year. Okay, but I'm fine with that. We'll get a
I'm happy
caterer.
to
I know
continue
good
doing
caterers. Okay, any other?
No, it was great.
Cheetos.
Oh my God, yeah.
Doritos.
I'll bring the, what is the?
Canada Goose. I like Dory.
Any other additional input?
No, it was a good job, everybody. It was cool.
All right, so approval of school handbooks.
So we didn't print them, they're huge, but you did get links in your
I read them all.
email. And, you know, this is one of those policy procedural things that, you know, historically we kind of neglect to do. And so I just wanted to make sure we brought them forward. And actually, note to self, that would be a great thing to put on our ongoing school board list, right?
That's right.
So in July or August, that should be coming forward. I'm gonna put that in my schedule right now.
So it's just I just had a question for each of the principals, but in the interest of it getting late, I'm only gonna ask the one. Just real quick, if the most important update, or most like the largest piece of it that you worked on, then changed, just like a quick, just like where to narrow in if you're an experienced family and you just wanna know what the biggest change is. Or if it wasn't, it was sprinkled across, then we can just assign everybody to read the whole thing, but I just didn't know if there's any major.
There really weren't major
Majors?
changes
Okay.
this year.
I mean, I would say just from my
Except for your code of
standpoint, from the elementary school, I think that like attendance is something that is a focus, will be a focus.
Okay.
Right? I think that we just need to get our kids here more consistently and do a better job of communicating when that's not happening and make sure that we're supporting families to get their kids here.
We did add one thing that families do tend to drop things off a lot during the day for their kids. And
What?
we were finding, flowers especially, we were finding that kids were being pulled out of school a lot, or pulled out of class a lot for these deliveries. So we've specified that we're only going to call kids out of advisory in the morning or call them for lunch or recess. Just because, a lot of it's sports equipment, it's water bottles, things like that. So it's, it takes time for the office staff to call into a room. They're interrupting classes. They're calling the student down. The student's missing 5 minutes. Sometimes they walk a little extra, go back, and that adds
I'm
up
shocked.
over time, so.
Never. My kids have everything every day.
I never went to the nurse just because I was
No.
Yeah, so,
Lunch bags.
so we did beef up the deliveries to students portion a little bit. We also put in big, bold, underlined text, please do not text your student during the day because we are off and away all day, cell phones at BMS. So we put that in there as well. So those are two things that I think might impact families.
Homework.
What's that?
Homework.
Homework, yep, we didn't, like we talked about, we didn't settle back.
We just did a big refresh of the homework stuff.
What was the big refresh? What was the, where we?
Well,
where
we didn't. We tried to, and we didn't.
didn't. That's
We
what-
didn't get a lot of staff who wanted to kind of join a committee. So we're going to retry again next year to do that. Yes,
I
you
thought that was
did
a point of emphasis.
You
I'm sorry
did,
about that.
last spring, you did ask for that. We did try to, not this past spring, the
Yeah.
spring before, John and I did try to pull together a committee
John
for
was
teachers.
left it off, and he said he was working on it, and so now it's being punted till next year?
This year, we're going
This
to
year.
try
Oh,
again
yeah,
this
yeah.
year.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's really just getting input on, like we've been talking about, if you're going to assign it, it's important, it needs to be checked, students need to be held accountable, and we need to prepare them
Right.
for high school.
I think the exit interviews from the kids were particularly instructive, that they asked that they had learned more about how important homework was at the Barrington Middle School. That was, so basically kids were asking for more homework and more accountability for homework. Kids.
Yeah. Yeah, once they hit high school, they were like, hey, now middle school kids aren't asking for it. Once they hit
Once
high
they
school.
hit, they were like, I wish I'd known this.
Then,
The
yeah.
These freshmen were saying,
Yes,
I wish I had had
agreed.
more homework in the middle schools, what they, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And we don't get a consistent message from all three high schools because they're all different.
yeah. What's the timetable on getting the homework policy in place? I mean, I'm gonna form a committee of some kind, but what's the,
Well, I don't know that we'll change the policy, right, because that's a policy committee, but
Right.
what we'll get is hopefully expectations.
not policy is the wrong word, but you're gonna put it in the handbook.
In the
or
handbook.
something.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
for
when is that
next
gonna,
year.
when's this gonna be put into
Hopefully
place?
for next year. Next school year, 25, 26.
So this year, there'll be nothing, no new stringent,
No, we
Nothing.
just couldn't get it.
couldn't come to a consensus on
Yeah.
doing homework.
So if we can get a committee together, then we would look to implement a change mid-year. It's a matter of interest, and then do we then have an administrative discussion? It becomes a directive. So we want to collaborate and engage from a committee perspective first, and if people are like, nah, we don't want to do that, then that prompts a whole different conversation.
Well, who doesn't want to? I'm sorry.
No, I said if we don't get, so last year, they didn't get a lot of interest in people volunteering to come and join a committee to have that conversation.
Yeah, okay.
So we're gonna attempt that again, like it's a fresh new year, let's have a collaborative process, let's bring a committee together, let's talk about it. You know, really with more of an emphasis on 7th and 8th, if we don't get that interest, it's not gonna be okay, then it's not happening, then we'll have to come back together administratively and go, okay.
Can we push it to try to get it done by mid-year?
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
Rather than punt it to next year? Like, I just don't want to lose another year.
Absolutely.
And again, I think that without obviously, in all things, collaboration is the way to go. But if you can't get buy-in, I mean, I'm sure you have thoughts, and I'm sure you have direction.
Personally?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
And I'm sure you have thoughts, and I'm sure you have direction.
Well,
Let's go.
I think it's pretty easy to say, look, you can put input into this and help make this work, or the administration's gonna do it, and then you're gonna be stuck with what we give you. So, to me, that's a pretty good incentive to say, maybe I'll sit down and at least have a little bit of say in this.
That's right.
It's kind of like the communication grid, right? Like, we're gonna set a minimum expectation. So we want to engage you in that discussion. If you're not gonna come to the table, we're still gonna set a minimum expectation. You know, it used to be that, and we had it specified by grade level way back when, you know, like K1, 2, the expectation was you read with your child every night for 20 minutes and they practiced their math facts for 5 or 10 or whatever it was at the time. And every sort of developmental span had expectations.
Can we say we would get some sort of not formalized feedback, but get it on an agenda for feedback for either that principal's report or through Deanna by, like, what, end of October? Early November?
Yeah.
And just see where the committee is. And truly, I mean this, I think I'm going to echo what Garth is feeling as well. If you need to come to the school board for support in incentivizing, I hope that's not the case, but I understand if it's one of those committees that, again, it's a tricky wicket with, like, if it's outside of school hours and, like, volunteering your time, and if you already have a good pool of committee staff members, but they're in 7 other committees, like, I understand the difficulty, but if you do need incentive for that, I think the board is collectively saying it's important, we want to hear about it at the beginning of November, and if you need in November to come to us saying we need help to get incentives, I think we're open to hearing about that, to get staff involved, so.
So you'd like that by November?
Or October.
Just like an update.
'Cause we want to implement it by the second half, so we'll probably want something, at least
Like the last meeting in October, see
Something
how
like
they're,
that, yeah.
okay.
Well, I'm looking at the schedule now to see where it
Yeah.
fits. So the October 22nd meeting is a budget workshop, so there won't
I was
be
just about to
any
say, I feel
other
like October is a crappy month for
business
that.
that day, so we could either do.
So let's reverse engineer this. If we're gonna have something in place for the second half of the year, when would you like to have us see something? When would you need to have us see something?
So half of the
I don't
year is
think-
hard, right? Because we're in trimesters.
Yeah.
So if you're going to
Oh,
switch
yeah, yeah, right.
like homework expectations,
So after
I'd rather
Christmas.
see it.
Yeah.
The first trimester ends at the beginning of December, which feels like a big.
Yeah, I think third as like a trial
I
for the
was just about to
following
say that. I
year.
was just
Okay.
about to say
So
that. I
do
think
this-
that's
I know it's 2/3 of the way through the year, but
Okay.
I feel like that's more realistic.
Better than nothing.
Yeah.
8th graders
Well,
at
it
least
gives
know,
us
they know
time.
where they're going to high school, and they know if they have to do homework or not, but they have to do.
only gives you some time to get this together, get staff together,
And it
yeah.
might not help the 8th graders as much, but it's certainly putting the
No.
7th
No.
graders
Yes.
online.
Yeah.
Yep.
But if you wait till next year, you're gonna lose
Yeah.
2 grades.
Okay, good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Anything else before we move on to the
We need a
super?
motion to.
Super minor change.
Oh, approval, right, sorry.
So moved.
Super
wait.
minor change from Jason.
Super minor change, the BES and ECLC handbooks have 2 different phone numbers for me, so if they could, if the ECLC number could match BES.
So you need ECLCs
664.
to change.
Correct. No, ECLCs.
Oh, change mine too.
Rich, will you do me a favor and email that to Laura and Tracy?
That's actually my landline. It still works.
'Cause I'll just-
My cell phone number, so anytime anybody wants to call.
This is BES.
Still my
This is
same
what
cell
I
phone.
want. Just 'cause
No, I thought of that.
What is
too,
that?
but-
this is the BES handbook, that's correct.
I always forget that,
Yours
it's
is
such a
right
like a
on the
obscure policy,
EMS
but
design.
it's a required, so.
Video.
Okay, so do we want to stick with,
I don't want to be a pain, but I just want to verify that is the correct number you want to use.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Would you have your
Hold on,
board?
or-
oh my
yes.
gosh. All
On the
right,
weekends, it's fine.
so, we made a motion, Rick made a motion to
Second.
approve, second. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Superintendent Gould. Aye.
I like speeding up. So I shared them at our previous meeting, they're still sitting in draft, just want to see where we're at with those and make sure we're good to take draft off and start rocking and rolling.
Were there any changes, or were we just giving it some time to?
I had mentioned, oh my goodness, am I gonna even remember? I had mentioned when I shared them that there were a couple things that I had noted while I was sharing that I wanted to add to them, and I just honestly can't remember what those things are right now.
I think one was the teacher evaluation.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. All right, I mean, I'm comfortable with them. I know we've looked at them several times, but
Yeah.
anyone else have any feedback or anything else that we wanted to discuss? I
Just
did,
don't add any.
well, I had a whole
Between
other
the
page, and
district goals and my own,
I
I'm like,
did check
whoa.
with Moira
Some
beforehand.
questions on the stipend process, but I'll give you a yell sometime.
Okay.
I just had some kind of generic questions about it, but
Yeah,
it
let's
doesn't
chat,
have anything to do.
there's a lot to that, we've done a lot of discussion on that one.
It doesn't have anything to do with your goals.
Okay. Yeah, that is one of those things that, I've had a great conversation with the stipend committee and the union, and it's like, we just wanna formalize it, because there's no like role descriptions, there's no rhyme or reason to the amounts, and so we've been starting to formalize those processes and committee work, to go back to your point, Carrie, around like, hey, if you need some financial support or incentives to get a committee going, when we started those discussions, I was pretty amazed and excited that we all had this sort of same approach and philosophy on what should be compensated and what is sort of a professional responsibility. So it just has, one of those things that keeps getting pushed to the side, and I was like, I don't want to talk about it
Long
anymore, I gotta
overdue,
make it happen.
yeah, long overdue.
Yes, long overdue.
Okay, great. Without any other comments, I will entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make that motion.
All right, I need a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
God, this is where you get the talk.
Too quick. Did we go too quick? Too fast? Slip that one by you?
Wait, what? I'm sorry, I missed you.
But this is where you get the talk. If you wanted people to say aye.
Oh, aye.
So few
All right,
inclined.
so we're moving on to the approval of the 2024, 2025, I know, I didn't catch this.
not goals.
It's not, I just want to formalize it. It's not goals. I know we've already passed the agendas. I just want to reemphasize that these are focus documents. And just to get this on the record, the reason why is not because I'm afraid of setting, or the board, I'm sorry, the board is not afraid of setting goals, although we've never published one in the first place, published them formally in the first place. We've always had goals, we've discussed them. However, as you've already heard as a public, or will, watching later, there are many goals that the district has, from superintendent level to building level, to grade level and curriculum level as well. So many, many goals, and I think that adding any more specific goals, or we thought adding any more specific goals at this time would be just one more thing to balance that might get overlooked. And so really a lot of these are how are we as a board supporting the district? What are we going to be doing as a collective board, especially with 2 new board members? It was an opportunity for us to restructure and regroup and focus ourselves. So this again is not an assignment for our leadership team. This is what we as a board are focusing on. So you're not going to see traditional goals that relate to something like 5% improvement in XYZ. These are what we're focusing on, and as we develop as a board and grow as a district, I'm sure these will also grow. This is a living document. You'll notice at the top it's going to be reviewed again post budget season and deliberation once we have an opportunity to really hear from our greater citizenship. So it's just a start. Okay. I don't know. Or did we want to report on them in detail, or just the overarching, just like list the overarching ones? What is everyone's opinion?
As you said, it's a living, working document, right? So does anyone have any feedback right now for Carrie? Great job.
Oh, thank you.
I know you've been working very hard on it.
And it was a collective from all, this document comes
Good.
from feedback and work that the board as a group has done, and I'm really proud of it, and thank all the board members for their input, and then also the leadership for all of the guiding principles, the additional materials for reference. I mean, all of that comes from your hard work, so we look forward to supporting all of the other goals that you have through this.
Well, and if anybody does want to listen, like you shared it, we didn't record.
We didn't record it, I know.
Workshop, oh my gosh,
Yes.
that's right. Well, it's in the minutes.
It is in, the document's in the minutes, and I'm,
In your general, what you just said is the cover to this document. Like,
Yes.
if this is what we're focusing on. These are the big areas that we're focusing on, so.
and we will continue, I think, as a board to update and reference this document in future meetings and as we're discussing things, especially around budget and season. So it won't be the last that you hear of it. It will definitely also be published in other places on our website. But for now, we always welcome input and feedback, but.
We do?
We do.
Well,
Oh, I would love to know if there's ever how the staff feel about it, or if they have any questions, or what kind of questions that you're hearing from staff. It's just at some point, I always want them to feel like they.
well, I
you
think
know,
we
just-
should
Not that it will change it.
share
but
it
just-
because
Yeah.
it's never, I think we shared this at the workshop session, like, I'm excited about this because you want to know what the expectations are and what your focus areas are, right? Like, great, we should all be working toward the same end goal on behalf of students and families. So, I'm excited that we have a more formal document to work from now.
All right. So we do actually technically need to approve them, so I will entertain a motion
Wait,
for
do we need to approve them?
Yeah, because it's like, I
It's
think
a
we do,
non-binding advisory.
Do we need to?
document.
It says approval
Yeah.
on here.
I don't think we need to approve it.
All right, then let's
They're yours, I mean, you
Let's
can.
move forward. Okay, so then moving on to the job description review and approval of 3 positions.
So operations manager, you've seen before, that was drafted. I think given it's a new position, I did, Bridget's spent a few days with us now. I did have her, one of our breakout sessions when we met the few days following our board admin workshop. We looked at a variety of things, but did some small group breakouts and people focused on job descriptions. So, she's starting to live and breathe the position, wanted to make sure she understood what was there. She didn't have any changes that she suggested at these early stages, so I think, it's one that we should, bring back and look at if need be as the position evolves. But we captured overarching under the spirit of the work that we wanted to have done.
Okay. Do you want to show us all, discuss all of them, and then or do we have to approve them individually?
So they end up getting officially posted, so it doesn't, we can do them all at once.
Okay, all right, I just wasn't sure, okay.
Yep.
Sorry, thank you.
Then, computer science teacher, so we have not had, other than the one at 5th grade, we have not had a UA in computer science for, I don't even know how long, a very, very long time. So, again, this is in draft because we were able to find, surprisingly yet again, a certified person in this area who's very passionate about it. And so we wanted to provide some overarching curriculum areas, but also give that person some latitude in their expertise to really get a sense of where the building is at as a whole and where students are and where we need to head next. What we have found is we make these assumptions that kids are these technology experts, right? Because they're on devices all the time. But there are some basic skills that they don't know how to do.
Yeah, access
And-
doesn't mean that they're professionals,
and they're
right? Yeah.
using it in quick formats, right? In a social media type of manner. If you say to them, "Oh, take this data and extract it and create a table," they're like, "What? I can do that?" So we used to teach it, and now we've watched it catch up with us, and we're not teaching it, and we're seeing the lagging skills. So teachers have reported to us, like, we're seeing these lagging skills in the classroom, especially in the sciences when you're manipulating data and wanting to do something with it, and they don't have the tech skills to do it. So, and it's also an opportunity to get some STEM activities out there, and let them be a little more creative in those upper grades when we have refined the skills earlier on. So now let's get into some coding and let's use some of these great, little robotics kits and different things that we have purchased, but we haven't put into play. So we're excited about that and giving that additional unified arts opportunity to our kids and not forcing them to take band and music multiple times when that may not be their area of interest or forte.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we're excited about
How
that.
are we with 3D printers? It's been a while since we
We have, at the middle school?
Yeah.
We have 2.
yeah.
They get used occasionally in tech ed, but it is gonna be used more.
This is going to be,
in-
That's so cool.
and
Yeah,
are they good?
yeah,
Yeah? Yeah?
we can do,
Yeah, Jeff made
They're not from Timo.
no.
with Jeff's advice, support, we made a conscious decision to stop buying stuff.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have the people, the knowledge, or the space to implement. So
Right.
we need to implement what we already have and stop buying stuff.
Okay.
So that's where we're at with that, which is pretty cool.
Right.
And then the position who was teaching the 5th grade UA is now morphing into the technology systems specialist. So one period out of the day was a UA, and the rest of the day was already doing this work. So you may see this one again after we live it for a year, because the goal is to have that person support technology integration across the district. We just don't want to have these massive expectations right out of the gate. Let's implement a building at a time. And that's where a lot of the systems work needs to happen, with creation of scheduling and all of that good stuff. So all the rollovers and et cetera. So,
All right, does anyone have any feedback or questions? The only thing I will say, and it can be moving forward, so this is not a request that you backtrack in any way, because what a waste of everyone's time. But in the future, can we just have a consistent format for the job descriptions?
we will reformat them.
Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm just saying, I was like, woo!
Yep.
This is all very different.
They came from a couple of different
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
places,
No, I
and
get
then
it.
it gets a little scary when you open up the folder of job descriptions, and it's like, there's another project.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm saying, like, as time
Yes.
allows, as things come up, just so that it just is just professionally.
That might be a next year action item of
Yes.
some sort.
Hey, I don't see it on their
Next
goals
year.
too, so,
Yeah, I honestly cannot take that on. I'm thrilled that we have a full library of job descriptions there, which is,
Yes. Step one.
that was a Gail initiative all those years ago. She made sure those job descriptions were there, so.
Hey, I'm not gonna, I'm just asking, where in here is this computer science teacher, they're gonna bring up AI?
Might not be on there. But that's a great point. We need to add it.
Sorry, I don't have it open. Isn't there something about, like, citizenship?
It is under citizenship.
So I
but I'm-
think that she might, I know that we talked about it in our interview.
Just, yeah, where that's gonna be worked into all
So I know
4
that it'll
years.
definitely be in there
Yeah.
somewhere, but
Okay.
if you want to put it in there specifically.
Well, it's up to you.
Yeah.
I'm not dictating curriculum, I'm just curious. It seems
No,
like
no,
it's
that's a great point.
a pretty important topic. Seems I see the news every once in a
Extremely.
while.
Yeah, occasionally you watch the news.
Lands,
yeah.
lands on your doorstep every once in a while.
I mean, the high
Because of my
schools are
feed.
specifically teaching it because
Mm.
kids are gonna use it, and so you may as well.
That's my point, you know,
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
Many of them, I'm sure, will get jobs.
And of course, the state had just come out with their writing AI program that they were piloting in the spring for teachers and students to use as well, and that's a free thing, so.
This actually dovetails well into getting your homework done.
Was there? No, we will. I'll email that question later. Okay, so
Helping these kids out.
I'll entertain a motion for approval of these 3 job descriptions.
So moved.
Okay, we got a,
I will second.
okay, got a second. All those in favor?
Yeah.
Aye, thank you. All right, so now we are moving on to everyone's favorite section, policies. Last but not least,
Here it is.
saving the best for last.
All right, so, library materials selection and adoption, districts have done it a variety of ways. Some have kept their IJL, and some have not, and just couched it all under KEC. So the difference being one's library materials, and then there's instructional, like classroom materials, fiction, nonfiction. So if you're like, hold the phone here, let's put it all in one succinct policy and have the procedure. So IJL, the committee is recommending to rescind because, you know, those couple of sentences will be morphed into the later KEC policy that we will look at. KA/IJO, there is absolutely no change here. I'm not sure if Carrie or Garth, you remember, I can't remember off the top of my head which folder we attacked first, but we mistakenly, when we updated either KA or IJO, we neglected that it was duly coded, and so we brought one forward and not the other, and we should have just brought both forward. So it's already gone through policy, we just didn't update it in the duly coded section. So you can see that KA/IJO and IJO/KA are identical. So we just wanted to get both.
And there's a reason that we have to have them, in case everyone's
In
like,
both
that's so
places,
stupid.
I know.
There is a reason, so just-
Yeah.
we're not just being typical.
No. We're not just being difficult. There's a few that are duly coded in that manner. KCD, there are 2 minor changes there, so it's around gifts to schools. We found a typo from old where encourage should have said encouraged. And then we are recommending to get rid of the last statement where we're supposed to like have an appropriate form to update inventory, notify the donor, et cetera, et cetera. It's that staying in line with, let's make sure what we're doing in practice isn't sitting incorrectly in policy. We always thank our donors for sure, and I think we need to be reminded to be good citizens and do that type of thing. But we certainly do not have an updated inventory of who has donated what, when, and for how much, and that, like, what purpose would that serve? So those are the only changes there. KDCA is use of students in the distribution of public information, which is a wildly interesting title, and it goes on to talk about using students as couriers. So just to simplify things, just, you know, as a public school, we don't go out and promote private events, activities. You know, we do share it from a building newsletter perspective, but we don't want students going home and saying, hey, you know, because then student folders and backpacks would be busting at the seams with free advertising for all kinds of people.
Our children are not Valpaks.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sorry to do this to you. Can we just go back to the gift one for a second? Maybe I'm reading this wrong. This paragraph that starts, the superintendent may accept gifts in the amount of $500 or less. Gifts in excess of $500 may only be accepted by the board, additionally pursuant to RSA, blah, blah, blah. Gifts in the amount of $5,000 or more shall require the board, okay? Then it says, for gifts of less than $5,000, the board will post notice. I think that's supposed to say, for gifts of more than $5,000, the board will post notice.
Oh, yes, actually, that's right. That's what we talked about.
Yep.
You mean you don't want to host a bunch of meetings and?
So, sorry.
Oh, that's good. Seems just allowing me to do that every time. Could you imagine how long?
Well,
We have a very generous community, is my point.
Good
So
catch.
It would be great. It would
Well,
take a
dude,
lot of work to do that.
This has been the policy
Yeah.
for, well, it was reviewed in,
Yes.
yeah.
2003.
I think you're required to by law, also over a certain dollar amount, you have to hold a public hearing.
That's what it says.
It says it, yeah,
It
$5
has to be
grand.
accepted in
That's what I
public.
mean, but I think it's an actual, an RSA
yeah,
that
it's,
requires it.
Yeah. it's
Yep, 198, 200B. Can you imagine what those are 1 through 99 are? I mean, 1 through 199.
Right.
Sorry about that, guys.
No, thank you,
Riveting.
that's
Yes.
perfect.
Okay.
How did that even jump off the page at you, Gar?
Jeez.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
All right.
So we did make some adjustments to the use of students as couriers. I'll call them that because I just think it's entertaining. We didn't have the superintendent or designee, like there may be times where the superintendent's not available to make such a call and it needs to be made. So certainly there could be somebody else making that decision. And, we also wanted to make sure that we were still communicating with the larger community around events. So we didn't want to eliminate, letting people know what's going on in town, so we wanted to make sure that non-school activities would be made available through district and building newsletters. All right. So a couple of different things for the next one. Public complaints. So there were inconsistencies about the title from NHSBA, including what we had, so we corrected that to just simply be public complaints, and then also the call numbers at the top, it should be KE, not KEB. So just sort of nitpicky changes there. And then the changes below what has been redacted, and then the highlight of what has been added. Making sure that there's like a proper chain of command and appeal process in place.
I had a question on number 2. If a member of the public will not personally present the complaint to the superintendent, blah, 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 board member shall ask the complaint be in writing and signed, then refer the complaint to the superintendent for review. So what happens if that individual chooses not to actually sign the complaint? I didn't see anything clear in the policy about what would happen if they wouldn't sign the complaint.
It's a good question.
I'm of the opinion if they won't sign the complaint,
Doesn't
that you
move
don't,
forward.
that it doesn't move
Yes.
forward. But I think it ought to clearly say that in the policy. Because if, the problem is I might want to complain about you right now, but then when, 2 days from now, when I call Carrie up and go, blah, 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 and she says, well, give me something in writing, and all of a sudden, well, I misunderstood what she said, so I'm not mad at her anymore. Now you're sitting
Yeah.
here going, so, I think there just ought to be something in writing that says, maybe it's added to that, that says failure to provide something in writing signed by the complainant will dictate the complaint goes no further.
Yep. I like that.
Sure.
Follow through with your,
Right.
yeah. Yep. I
All
like
right, so
that.
are people comfortable if we just add that language to number 2 at the end? So failure to provide a signed written statement will indicate
Termination.
termination of.
Well, I mean, it could be, when we say written, I just don't want people to, am I overthinking that? Want people to think that they have to handwrite it? Like, it can be typed, doesn't,
Right.
just like
no.
documentation, I don't know, however you want to wordsmith it
Signed
is fine.
document.
Yeah, signed document. I certainly don't need people to handwrite,
In cursive.
yes, in cursive. Yes,
And
The quill. Sir?
of an American paralegal only, so.
so failure to document and sign the complaint will result.
No further action.
Termination.
In termination of the complaint. Perfect, all right.
Have you ever heard that thing with, like, if you're angry, you can, like, write the email, but then don't send it? I feel like that's
Yeah.
like a professional way of saying that, right? Write it, but if you don't sign it, maybe
If you don't
take a
sign
second
it,
thought.
yeah.
All right, cool. That's a great
It's an
suggestion.
We
MTSS
will
beat that.
make those additions for second reading.
All right.
And then, last but not least, I think it's last, is it the last? Let me
No.
make sure.
There's two, there's the KEC and then
Little
LDA.
one. After.
I'm gonna jump to LDA
Yes.
just because LDA has come back so many times, and that way if there's questions on
only first
KEC, we
read.
can go back to it. So,
I think it just
We're
came
sorry.
conversational at once. It was just like,
LDA, student teaching and internships, it has come
Was this another catch?
forward since last January, like since the
Another catch.
hearing. So the last question that not only administration, due to our lack of subbing, and also teachers who have had interns are like, hey, like sometimes they cover for me and I, schedule a sick day to get a bunch of appointments taken care of. I know my kids are in good hands, right? And so, NHSBA's recommendation is restricted to not more than 3 non-consecutive days. However, you have some higher ed institutions that do allow that, and what better practice than to have real time,
Yeah.
So teachers aren't going to do it if they're not confident that the intern can't handle it. So we felt as though, first it would be, the teacher, the principal talking about like, okay, is this a good choice? But also, certain institutions just simply don't allow it. They can't be earning money during their internship. So really, we should be deferring to the higher ed rules around what they're permitted to do. And that has been our past practice, so trying to get practice in line with policy, or policy in line with practice, I should say. So that's the reasoning for this one coming back yet again. And Policy Committee has chewed on KEC for a while, and it finally landed in Elizabeth's lap. I was like, oh my goodness, somebody just take the wheel on this one. And so what the committee and then ultimately Elizabeth did was look at multiple area ones, primarily a particular district who consulted a lot of time and energy with direct legal advice because they had a book question in their community. And so we felt like, again, let's capitalize from what our colleagues' pain and suffering, right? We do the same when we've had an experience that they can benefit from. And so a lot of it is patterned after the district who had attorneys go in and provide a nice, tight process. So there's a very clear process now for if a, well, really, I was gonna say a parent, but really anybody has an objection to course material, library selection, et cetera, that they have a process now to, bring that complaint forward, and then a process to hear that and make a decision.
Yes, I think this policy does a great job of protecting both the individual rights of families' access and families' beliefs and practices, while also respecting students' access to information. So thank you for the legwork.
I would just ask on page 1 to spell out Barrington School District as opposed to BSD. I figured it out after a minute, but
Where are?
Right at the bottom.
Oh,
Page
yeah,
one
I
down
see
the
it,
bottom.
thank you, absolutely.
And The other thing was on page 5, section 4, it says the superintendent shall be informed of the formal complaint received. I know the superintendent is gonna tell us about it, but if you added "and school board" in there, it might stop that person from calling one of us
Oh, yep.
ahead of time. I mean, I have every faith that if there's something like that come up, you're gonna do it anyway. I'm just
Yeah,
looking
because
at
that could
from,
be
if somebody sees, you know, it will stop them from calling one of us first and having us tell them, look, you gotta go to the school. There's a way to do that.
Yep, and
I
then,
assume this is not a big deal in this town, right?
there's been a few rumblings, but nothing that has had any traction or gone anywhere. But there have been some questions.
Sure.
What was the memo you just made? I'm sorry, Rick, what page was that on?
Page 5, where it says the superintendent will be notified. The superintendent shall be informed of the formal complaint received. All I asked was, is that after superintendent, just put "and school board" in there? And again, I have every faith that the superintendent's gonna tell us about it, but I'm hoping that somebody reads this before they file a complaint, that they won't be calling us to complain about it when there's a process they gotta go through.
Right, because then you're just gonna say, hey, there's a policy, go do the process. But hopefully if
Yep.
they see that, they'll realize you're already informed and it will stop that. So I guess my question is, how do we want to word that? So the superintendent and board, so do you want it to be my responsibility to reach out to you all? Okay, so then we want to word it a little differently. Because if I'm reading this and I have a
Yep, I see what
complaint
you're
at the
saying, yep.
elementary level, Rich might go, oh, I need to notify the superintendent and the board. Here you go.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect point. I'd be looking for you to tell us.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, for the formal complaint received, who will then
Here, the school board.
notify the full school board. Okay.
I hope we never get to those.
Yep.
Okay, somebody wanna,
My only minor is it calls to the R document, but there isn't, this whole thing is like the policy, so at the very, I lost it, where is it? It's a very, second to last page, so it's on appendix, first page of appendix C, it says see also KEC-R, but I don't think we have a dash R. This whole thing is the,
oh, isn't there a letter? Oh, but that's not an R, is it?
so,
So
it's
R
page one
usually
of,
stands for procedure. So where are you, Jason? Sorry.
so appendix C,
Right here.
which is the form.
On the bottom,
The-
where it says
Oh, yeah, yeah,
R1.
yeah, yeah.
It says see the R document, but I don't think we have one.
Oh,
If this is
yes.
the whole, I would just get rid of that,
Correct.
KEC-R1.
Yep.
You have a great future, Paul, man.
Not in
Who's
your
looking
time,
to
not in your time.
Get rid of their committee, no.
We put that in as a specific test you have passed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good catch, because that just got carried over from somebody
It's
else.
it's actually in the form itself as well, if
Yeah,
you go up to
that's
the
in two.
paragraph.
Yep, I see it.
That one I didn't notice until just now.
That's where they were getting
It makes your head spin after you look at 4 or 5 other districts' policies and try to make
Oh, I
one
love
good
it.
one out of that.
Oh, I love it.
This was one of the more challenging ones, because it had a lot of steps to it, and it
I
took
have
some
them all,
brain
I have a
power.
special tab for all the 3 schools.
When it's time to do policies, I hand them off, here, do this, come
Yes,
back.
thank you,
and see me.
All right, else has got to rattle off the, if we're ready for.
All right, these all for first or second read?
The LDA is for second, the rest of them are first. And you have a recommend to
LDA is
rescind.
LDA is for first or second, you say?
IJL is a recommend to rescind,
Rescind. Okay.
and
First
then,
read, okay.
and then LDA, the student teaching internship, that's a second read, the rest are firsts.
I'd like to make a motion to rescind IGL, and then to accept for first read KA/IJO. It's, by the way, it's duly coded as IJO/KA, KCD, KDCA, KE, KEC, and then for second read, I'd like to make that motion further to accept for second read LDA. Can I get a second? Can I get a help?
Yeah.
Repeat that motion again.
Somebody else second, please?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
You did.
Yes, I did.
Our future
Can I
repeats.
get a hell yeah?
All right, so that takes us to our second opportunity for public comment. There is still no one else here in person. Normally we do in person first, so I will
That door being
defer
open is
to
creeping
the
me out.
people online. As a reminder, you raise your hand feature is opportunity. I will wait for an awkward 5 seconds.
Today's.
Awkward because you said it was.
And there, I was in my head, but that's fine. I waited 5 whole days, so there we go. So thank you all for joining, for coming, but I think we can adjourn. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Okay, Rick, we got a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Was that beep the sign that we stopped recording? Yes. Aye.